there?
Oh, the previous year. That was the year we went and watched.
Should you say we are?
On 91.
One more tap.
Yeah, that was the Air State one, and we watched that go over.
Almost
It
there.
looks like we're not yet.
It's gonna cool down. I think over here it's gonna.
That could be worse.
I watched it.
Almost stopped and got a big 44 ounce.
Someone might want to say something in the microphone to see if
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
it's good to go.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome to the May 3rd North Logan City Council meeting. It looks like we are only missing Joni. We will begin today with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Craig, after which Emily will give us a prayer.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank thee that we could gather together as a council, and we ask for the speedy recovery of the people who are missing. Heavenly Father, we ask thee to bless us to discuss city business with clear minds and open to new ideas. We ask thee to continue to bless us with weather that is appropriate for the water. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I do not, tonight we need to modify the agenda slightly. We will remove item number 19 from the agenda. And with that adjustment, I will accept a motion to adopt the agenda
So moved with the
modification.
modification. Thank you.
All right, motion by Emily,
Second.
second by Roger, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Will we
Okay.
still go to executive then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I don't believe we have any meeting minutes. And Alan, do you mind giving us a follow-up on issues from our previous meetings and review the action items?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Just jumping down through these, we'll go over the Civic Center at the end of this meeting. We'll also go over some things related to garbage and green waste. So I won't go over those at length. Water we'll also discuss. Jumping down through sewer. We're working on our DEQ bond right now, and also a potential other segment of the sewer line that we may have an opportunity to work with the development on, and we're weighing each of those options right now for our major trunk line down through Logan City. And so working on that 48 to 60-inch line that goes through Logan City at this time. And they're also going around the city, and they are it's kind of like a camera method, but it's actually an ultrasonic method to examine each sewer line throughout the entire city. We used to do about a third of the city every year. Now we do almost the entire city every year to examine and see if there's portions where the lines may be damaged, or if there's infiltration and other things throughout our city. So it's been fantastic, Zach, setting that up. Streets, right now, you've seen them out. They've started our surface treatments. This is pretty early this year, and they've really got a good handle on it this year as far as crack sealing. So they're going through and they're prepping for both just for general maintenance, but then for a lot of the surface treatments that will happen throughout the city this summer. Stormwater, we'll probably go over that at length. We always confuse stormwater and flood water. But right now, stormwater, they kind of overlap both areas, but they are prepping for several things, and Jordan will go over that later on in this meeting as an agenda item. Engineering, we're going over water shares, a few other things. The 2500 North 800 East roundabout. They're still just working on some rough draft designs in that area, and some wetland concerns. Still on 3100 North. Parks, it's a very busy time for them. They're starting up a lot of their different irrigation and just fixing endless amounts of things throughout the week. Just trying to gear up right now for our parks. Trails. We were working on several different things, and we'll probably gear up on a trails committee. I'll talk with the mayor about that, but we'll probably need to put together a few things for just looking at a trails committee to organize a few of the different efforts that we're working on right now. Recreation. It's very hectic right now because soccer was pushed back 2 or 3 weeks later than they normally start. And so it's starting to overlap with some other sports. So they have soccer late. They have all of the indoor things that they're pushing now, along with baseball coming up. So hats off to the rec department. They're at full capacity right now and beyond, working several hours each week getting that set up. Just jumping down through cemetery, they're really trying to get secondary water up to the cemetery. It's going along well right now. They've got the head gate installed, and they'll probably put the pump in the next couple of months, and then they'll run the line up to the cemetery. But then we're also prepping for Memorial Day as well. Our Memorial Day program, which should be fantastic, on Memorial Day is when that occurs. Community development. We'll go over a couple things tonight that they've been working on, and then they have a couple other things related to ADU ordinance. You'll probably see a few edits on that in the coming months, but that's also the CUP that was considered and kind of remanded back by the appeals authority. So they'll discuss that tomorrow night as well. And then also along those same lines, hats off to Scott. I think we may have discussed this last meeting. But Scott Perks received, he filled out the grant and received the grant from UDOT to start on our general plan, which is a very large grant. And so hats off to him for filling that out, competing and receiving that grant. That'll be a fantastic opportunity for the city to update a lot of our general plan and our associated code with that. Jumping down through the treasurer, we'll go over some things that she did to help out with green waste tonight. And then also, I don't see it on here. There's an item above that on her to-do list. She's actually set up a method working with one of our companies that helps print our newsletters. And they're going to mail things out soon directly to each resident just by address. So it won't be dependent upon a utility connection. And so they're going to look at doing that as an option, as opposed to what we were going to do, which is kind of go out and put flyers on doors and get people signed up for this. But now we might just go ahead and send it to every door throughout the community so that everyone in the community can be receiving notifications and the newsletter. So that's up to her for putting that together. Vicky's putting together packets for new businesses, how they can come in and really streamlining a lot of the processes there. Human resources, there's tons of things going on right now, a lot of personnel things that we're just updating, a lot of wellness programs and other things that they're putting together, and some hiring and recruiting software that we're looking at that some of the surrounding communities use. We'll go over some budgetary things tonight that Scott's put together. And then the library, they had their pickleball tournament that rec helped put together as well. The Friends of the Library helped put it on with the rec department. Went really well. A lot of teams, really went smoothly. From what I understand, they raised over $1,000 or plus, probably around 1,000 to 2,000. But went really well. So that's off to those departments putting that together. And then jumping down through police, we're working on a few things, then also code enforcement. I know they're really heavy into the police department's budget right now. So they'll have their budget approval within the agency. And then we'll have our associated budget approval in June. Tonight's a draft budget, but the actual budget will be approved in June after public hearings. And then the fire department, hats off to the council who had the opportunity to go down, and thanks to the fire department for putting together the extrication equipment demonstration. Emily, Lynn, Mayor, you guys did a fantastic job of tearing apart an Impala
Did we?
top to bottom. Yeah.
I didn't get any job offers, so I'm just gonna assume
I
that
just
we
want
weren't
to say
up to
this.
par.
I didn't think you were looking like you were having as much fun as me. So maybe that's why I was getting.
It was, it's really hard work. So hats off to you guys. I'm exhausted.
Is there a video of this?
There are several
Oh, yeah.
photos.
Okay.
They were taking candid photos.
So
And-
that I had to miss.
That is bullying, by the way. Candid photo.
I just wanted to
So-
turn on the lights.
But just to
That's
kind of
fine.
highlight that, the reason the fire department did this
Can we
is
get that?
because they received the grant from the Dennis Leary Foundation to get that extrication equipment that's battery powered, lighter, better, faster. And apparently it worked very well for the mayor and city council to be able to tear apart that vehicle. So that's off to the fire department. That was a really fun activity for them and the demonstration. And then also our ambulance that's for Station 120 should be done sometime in July. They're
Oh,
building
wow.
that and putting that
That's
together.
fast.
So that's the report. I skipped over several things. So if there's any other questions, let me know.
One thing I think you did skip over is Councilman Roger Anderson Day. And what, Friday, Roger?
You mean my 50th birthday?
Yeah,
Ooh,
all the way from Japan,
Wow,
avocado.
my 50th birthday.
It's gonna taste really authentic, so no warranties.
My midlife.
You may want to share with people because it's kind of authentic.
I can't.
I'm
tell
pretty
what-
sure I got like frozen cupcakes.
I can't tell what flavor it is.
Well, it's wait, you've been here a little longer.
50.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, we'll move on to recognition of an exemplary employee. This month or this time, it's Brian Koch from the Public Works Utilities Department. Brian has been working hard to make sure everyone in North Logan is safe from flooding and all of the possible problems that can come from a heavy spring runoff. Hiking to the top of Water Canyon to check snowpacks, making sure the Green Canyon storm water channels and old flow stream beds are clear. He has been monitoring the snow and water levels on nights and weekends, keeping all of the city staff aware of the situation as it unfolds and proactively ensuring that we are ready for whatever may come this spring. So hats off to Brian. He's the guy working behind the scenes to make sure that we're at least mitigating any disasters that are heading towards us with the spring runoff. So if you'd join me in giving him a hand of applause.
And that picture is from a couple weeks ago. That is not
Really?
midwinter
Where's he standing? Like,
in Water Canyon,
oh, wow.
Snow Canyon.
It's a little bit terrifying. Okay, and then we are pleased to have a group from Utah State here to present they did their USU well-being survey and they did more of a deep dive since then. So they're here to present those findings.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Dr. Courtney Flint. I lead the Utah Wellbeing Project for USU and been proud to have North Logan as a partner for the last 4 years. This year, we didn't do the survey. We've been working on data analysis, but I also taught a class called Building Community Environmental Resilience and had 8 students and a team of 5 graduate students worked on a few cities, including North Logan, and sort of did a deeper dive with the data, but also some other materials and really trying to tackle some of the issues that were raised by Mayor Peterson as some top of mind issues. So I'll let them present that. Bailey and Mahmoud.
Hi, my name is Mahmoud Avi, and I'm a PhD student at Utah State University. I'm also a civil engineer. Thank you. Yeah, so, sorry. So as Dr. Flynn mentioned, we took this course, Building Community Environmental Resilience, and a big part of it is on well-being. And as Dr. Flynn mentioned, that it actually provides it actually did a wide scale survey to find valuable information about different aspects of well-being and what is mostly valued and what is valued by the local residents of Utah. And we actually went through the data. We tried to find out what the major takeaways are, and we developed some recommendations, which we'll be sharing with you today. So basically, well-being is
How long has it been since you were in college? Come on, Alan.
Too many years. Sorry, we'll get caught up.
So well-being is basically referred to as the health, prosperity, and happiness status of a community. And the important factors that affect well-being are physical. It can be like physical, like health services, or social or emotional status of the community, economic support from the community of the town, and environmental conditions like air quality. And there are indicators, so we can actually measure the well-being. For example, we can measure the life expectancy status or income level, and based on those indicators, we can actually measure what the well-being status is. And then there are other influencing factors like social cohesion, trust, collaboration among members of the community. So here is the result from the community Utah Wellbeing Survey. As you can see, North Logan did really good. North Logan is considered as a rapid growing city, and it actually did 4 out of 5, so it's pretty good. So our major, when we analyzed the data, we found so the residents highly valued the mental health, safety and security, and city parks. And then we went through the open comments where people shared their concerns. And we found that people really love the small town feel, beauty of the city and surrounding areas, and the love within the community. But some of the residents, they are worried that the growth is too fast, but there are divisions on the pace of economic growth. And we had a meeting with Dr. Mayor Peterson, and she showed interest in utilizing new communication channels and methods.
You can call me Dr. Peterson. That works.
Okay, lower this a little for me. I'm Bailey Hanson. I am a master's student at USU in Environment and Society, and I'm very pleased to be here with you all. So some recommendations, and I will say you're having a lot of the same problems as most cities. Communication channels can be difficult, especially with all these different avenues now. So some recommendations are tapping into social channels that are already being used quite heavily. So a lot of Facebook groups, which I think you utilize already, but also in your survey that you sent out personally, I think you asked the residents what their favorite way of contact is, and maybe doing that on a larger scale and kind of figuring out, you know, which channels are going to be best for what demographics really. And then incentivizing for email signups. It sounds like you guys have some plans already with, you know, like the newsletter. So that was cool to hear. The physical copies are a great idea, but also incentivizing through maybe like a raffle or discounts at local places, things like that could also improve that as well. And then utilizing smart growth strategies for master plan and grow sustainably. I mean, growth is going to be hard. Like some people feel it's too fast, some people are too slow. So being able to do that in a way where you can grow sustainably is a good direction. And we have some resources for that as well. So what we're providing in our report that is more of a deliverable to you. So not everyone will be able to see that, but you're welcome to share as much as you want of it. We have 7 marketing pointers from an expert on USU campus in the business department. And his name's Dr. Edwin Stafford. And then we have 2 on communication channels, 1 main source on building that email list to connect with the community, 3 smart growth resources, and 8 general communication resources. And then if you'll click on the report embedded link at the bottom. And we'll send you a PDF version of this, and all the links should stay intact during that. So I'm just, if you'll scroll down slowly, I'm just kind of walking you through what's included in here. So the beginning's just in going over what we did for this project, working with North Logan, what kind of analysis we were working on. And then if you go down a little bit more. So these are some of the fun recommendations from working with Edwin Stafford. So using social influence, which you're already doing, I can see by highlighting, you know, a great employee every week or every meeting. That's a great way to use social influence to highlight people that are doing really well and helping the community. And then designate, you know, resources or share with communications with children like youth programs, but I do understand that that can be a little difficult. Sometimes STEM is required in these programs. So working with groups within the schools can be helpful. And then I won't go through all of these. I was recommended Cache Valley 411 Facebook group, but I'm now aware that that's more of like a gossip column.
But it's very entertaining.
I
So
was like, it's good goss.
I know.
Do you mind actually pausing for just a second? What is social influence? I guess I'm out of the game long enough. I don't know what that means.
So it's just like social norms. So like when you're seeing a behavior, like just basically people interacting with the community, if you're wanting to increase community engagement, you're highlighting, like you were doing already, you were highlighting someone doing things for your community, and that kind of inspires others to do the same. So that's all social influence
okay.
is. It's just showing people what, you know, you want your community to look like, that support and that connection. Let's see. But that was a good question. Sorry, it's a little, I should have explained that. Let's see, but yeah, with Cache Valley 411, it can be very gossipy. However, people love gossip. So you can always go there and post like your council meeting times and things like that and see if you get a better engagement with that. It also is a great way to help direct people to resources, especially if they're complaining about them on Cache Valley 411. But yeah, and then if you go down a little bit more, it sounds like you're doing great with the newsletters so far. There's also other citywide apps that I'm sure you're aware of, like Nextdoor, connecting with some of the different neighborhoods within North Logan. Nextdoor is great for that. This is just trying to target, these are resources on how to target maybe some demographics that aren't as easy to reach. You know, social media can only go so far. Not everyone's on social media. So these are a few different ways to choose channels based on which demographic or group that you're trying to reach out to. And if you go down, I kind of touched on the email list already, but there's that resource. These are the general communication resources, and they're pretty typical, like toolkits and really great resources for local governments to use. But if you go down a little more, we have some that are specifically on small town feel. Just because North Logan is growing rapidly, but I know that people in this valley really love a small town feel, and that's something that a lot of places are losing in that identity. And so we have a few sources that helps kind of revitalize that downtown, that center area where everyone comes together. Also just different multimodal networks as you grow, you know, having these new big neighborhoods, things of like that. And then up above is there's some more that may be helpful in the general planning too, if you're interested, but it's just so different ways to incorporate like land use planning, affordable housing, environmental protection, things like that you can implement into your plan. And I think that's mostly it, but you guys are doing great as far as cities go, and it's been lovely working with Mayor Peterson, and it seems like she's loved in this area. So yeah, thank you.
You've talked to the people I pointed you to. No, it was really such a fun time to work with your group. And I know you guys spent a ton of resources on this. So we really appreciate your work. I cannot wait really to do more of a deep dive with this and click on some of the links and stuff. So we really appreciate your time and hard work on this. And Dr. Flint, always, we really appreciate that connection that we have with you. So, all right. Thank you.
Yeah. If you have any questions going through the report too, feel free to reach out to us.
Okay. Sounds great.
Okay,
Thank you. Okay. Then we are finished with our opening business items. We'll move on to our action items, starting with a proclamation recognizing International Firefighters Day. We have a whole group tonight, which is wonderful. I guess I'm reading this.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Whereas firefighters dedicate their lives to the protection of life and property, and sometimes that dedication is in the form of countless hours volunteered over many years. In others, it is many selfless years working in the industry. In all cases, it risks the ultimate sacrifice of a firefighter's life. And whereas International Firefighters Day is a time where the world's community can recognize and honor the sacrifices that firefighters make to ensure that their communities and environment are as safe as possible. It is also a day in which current and past firefighters can be thanked for their contributions. And whereas this day gives our community a special opportunity to express their heartfelt gratitude for the incalculable contributions which our firefighters so generously bestow upon us. Now, therefore, I, Lindsay Peterson, Mayor, on behalf of the City of North Logan, do hereby proclaim May 4th, 2023 as International Firefighters Day. And I encourage all citizens to show support and appreciation to our city, county, state, and federal firefighters who protect our lives and property so diligently throughout the year, and by remembering past firefighters who dedicated their lives to preserve our safety. We've had a lot of good contact with the firefighters today, and I'll say it publicly, what I've said to you privately. We so appreciate your service and feel lucky to have you looking over our community. So join me in giving them a hand of applause. And to demonstrate our gratitude, we will excuse you at this point too. You're always welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to get on out of here. It is going to be a long one. So,
Just for the record, Craig has to stay though, right?
yeah, he does. Okay, we'll move on. Thanks, you guys. We'll move on to consider approving an appointment to the North Logan City Library Board. That is Cassidy Crockett. I've spoken with her and highly recommend her to fill a library board seat, and ask also city council and anyone here, if you know of anyone who would be willing to serve on the board. They're always looking for good people. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Cassidy Crockett to the library board.
Motion to approve Cassidy Crockett to the library board.
Motion by Buzzy,
Second.
second by Roger. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. That motion carries unanimously. Next, consideration regarding a proposed density determinant subdivision concept plan for the Linden Lane subdivision located at 3100 North and 1200 East and consisting of 8 lots on 5.5 acres of the R120 zone. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, so yeah, as you can see, 3100 North and 12th East. This subdivision is a bit unique in that it's straddling 3100 North, right? That went in preemptively before this parcel went forward to develop. Typically, we get the road when the development goes through, but the road went through first on this one. So yeah, you see parcel 0022, kind of that upside down pizza slice there. That's the subject parcel. It is a density determinant subdivision. So we've got a couple of lots varying in size, but over 5.5 acres. They've got 8 lots that are proposed. Now, I want to just jump over to the exhibit in the staff report with the concept plan. So something that's also unique about this particular parcel is it is in an area that is anticipated to split this land between North Logan City and Hyde Park City. There's a past agreement that indicated that 3100 North would be that dividing line. However, the parcel in its entirety is in North Logan City currently. And so there's actually an agreement that indicates that when this property develops, that it will then be split between the two cities. It'll be entitled in North Logan City, but then it will be split through a de-annexation and a re-annexation process. It'll be de-annexed that northern part from North Logan, and then that portion will be annexed into Hyde Park. So before they can actually get any building permits, that annexation process will need to be completed. But they'll
And
go through
that's-
subdivision.
Sorry to
requirements.
interrupt you, but that's primarily due to sewer access, right?
I believe that was part of the consideration when they drew those boundary lines, trying to figure out what would be in North Logan, what would be in Hyde Park. It kind of had to do with who can be sewered where,
Yeah.
Topography. So as you'll see, there's a couple of lots here ranging in size, and they are right around a ½ acre at the smallest. So it's in the R120 zone. So 20,000 square feet is typically the minimum under density determinant rules. Some can vary in size, smaller or larger. But that's the proposal. There is a trail easement being dedicated along the canal, a 15-foot easement. So we'll preserve that pedestrian access and connectivity between North Logan and Hyde Park, which is a great asset. No new roads are being proposed. So 3100 North obviously is already improved. And then we've got 12th East. There will be some frontage improvements, curb, gutter, sidewalk, those types of things on those existing roadways, but no new roads being cut in. One thing we're working with the applicant on is sharing access points. So we limit the number of driveways onto and off of both 12th East and 3100 North. 12th East is obviously a critical north-south corridor, as is 3100. So we're working with them to identify shared access points. And when the preliminary plat comes through, we'll show some shared access easements between the two lots.
So the hope is not to have 8 driveways.
On every single
Okay.
lot. Yeah, we're trying to combine those. So we have predictable and evenly spaced access points.
Scott, question on what's the easement options for if we ever need a future roundabout here?
We'd
have to
have to
actually
look
go-
at some widening and some more,
Because the property lines don't take that into consideration, right? So
Not
that'd
under
be a
this proposal.
future-
no. Correct me if I'm wrong. So given the width here, Jordan, do you know how much room would be needed for the roundabout?
We can look at that, and maybe one thing that we should do in this particular situation, because the county in the latest project list, North Logan didn't ask for this or Hyde Park, but the county actually put a roundabout on their list of project priorities for this intersection.
Yeah.
And what they're talking about doing is, as you look at this, we can look at some other designs that we have because we have the 8th East 2500 North roundabout that's being designed roughly right now. And it's very similar rights of way. So 3100 North is very similar to 2500 North. So it'd clip the corners.
I think that's my concern, right? Because the 800 East one has just caused so much frustration for the landowners there.
Mhm.
Maybe this is a chance to get in front of it rather than behind for this specific subdivision. Can't we do like an easement there so that it's all the homeowners are aware, the property owners that, the
It'd
land
be-
is here, but it's under easement for the city, should that happen?
Be a discussion with the developer as to what would be required there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Buzzy, we can add that as a condition that we explore that as part of this concept plan. So we're at the very beginning stages of
Yeah.
the layout of this thing. So if we want to look at what that looks like, how much of a corner clipping would be on those 2 corner lots, we can add that as a condition of approval.
I'm
So
not
as
sure
they're
how the rest of
vested.
the council feels, but
Well, I think you're right, Buzzy, like, if this is an inevitability kind of, it'd be better to plan around that. I'm assuming, Nick, that you'd rather discuss that at this point rather than down the road.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think that would be great. I think especially if it's more imminent than I knew.
It will be because this intersection's already somewhat busy. It's functioning right now. We've had some issues that we pointed out in the winter.
With
Some
buzzy
council members
kids
wanted
only.
to flip the
Stop
stop
signs
signs
need to be
every
reversed, yeah.
day. To keep people
Just
their
on weather
toes.
condition, like.
Yeah,
you
so,
imagine?
but the next step would be a 4-way stop. And then the next step after that is a light or a roundabout. And roundabouts are very expensive. And so the reason they would put it in though, and the reason this will be imminent and is because of the 12th East is a regionally significant road. So if it ever does go through and then it goes into Hyde Park, it goes all the way to Smithfield at some point. At that point, it would expedite the need.
And I
for a
think Hyde
roundabout.
Park's working in earnest on their portion of
Yeah,
12th
they are.
East, whatever they call it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 10th East, I think.
Okay.
Or-
Nick, I didn't
sorry,
realize this was yours. It's been a sore subject for some people in other subdivisions, so it'd be nice to get in front of it, so we don't have anybody there that's frustrated down the road. No pun
Yeah.
intended. But cool. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Doc.
Cool, yeah.
Actually, once again, Buzzy, mean your puns, pun intended.
And I disagree. Puns are
You
banned.
guys are killing me.
So a couple of things, culinary water, secondary water, sewer, all of those pieces of infrastructure are already in the road, so it's fairly simple plug and play as far as those components are concerned, running laterals there. They will be required to put a street light on the corner with their street lighting plan. Couple of things, so when the city council is looking at a concept plan, their scope is looking at, layout, have they provided enough information to convey the intent of the project? And then establishing any additional items of information that you would like to see before we move forward to preliminary plat and development plan. So a couple of things that we typically do at this point is either require or waive specific reports. So in this regard, the applicant can suggest reports that they believe to be unnecessary, and we can either concur or decide we want to go ahead and have that report. So for example, a geology report has been requested to be waived. Staff agrees there's not a lot of geologic concern in this particular area. We will want to see a grading and drainage plan. So staff recommends we require that. Water conservation plan would be required as well. A non-buildable plan is not really necessary. There's no water, wetlands or, floodplain, those types of things that we need to be worried about. No sleeps or steep slopes either. A traffic report, we don't believe is necessary. Existing roadway should be adequate to handle the traffic here. Fire protection plan, these guys aren't up on the bench where they would be in the WUI area where we would be concerned about, wildfire mitigation. But we will have them provide us a street plan or street lighting plan.
What about soils report? That was the first one.
Oh, sorry, did I flip my page?
Yeah, it's right at the end of page 2.
Yeah, requested to be waived. It's kind of along the lines of geology.
Okay.
Are we concerned about geologic hazards here? Typically where we're on the bench and we're looking at steeper slopes, that's where we would say, yeah, we want to see what those look like. We will want to see what the grading and the drainage plan looks like though. So we're
Okay.
keeping that as a recommendation. So as far as the city council's review of this, if there's any additional information you'd like to see, now is the time to request it as part of your motion. So for example, a condition exploring the roundabout and the dedication that might be necessary to fit a roundabout in at this location would be, something you might want to add to the motion. But we did have a positive recommendation from Planning Commission on this, and there's a couple of conditions in the staff report that staff would recommend you add as part of your motion if you'd like to move this forward. Do you guys have any other questions on this in particular?
Guess the lots in North Logan will go for more than Hyde Park, I'm sure.
Maybe.
It's based on
Just-
geographic.
Somewhat related, but not
Oh, it's
directly.
smaller. The biggest one is in Hyde Park.
That's true.
So
More. This is, so is this under the new state law? We would not consider this next year, correct? This would be out of our purview. Is that right?
that's not until 2024. So we will be making adjustments to how we review these projects.
Okay.
And so we'll maybe look at land use authority and whether or not a smaller subdivision like this would come to city council.
Even a concept plan, right, is,
Yeah, they pretty much have to submit all the things all at once and
Okay.
prove compliance with the initial submittals. So we'll see how that looks going forward.
I'm curious how that is for developers too. So we'll check back in with you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions from the council? Okay, then I would entertain a motion and would encourage that that additional caveat.
And one quick reminder, this is an administrative decision, so make sure in your motion you accept or you
Except the staff,
basically you
Yeah.
adopt the staff report and the findings in the staff report as part
But
of the
we-
motion.
but we can tack that additional one on
Correct.
verbally. Okay,
Absolutely.
so I move that we approve the Linden Lane subdivision concept plan and with the accepted staff report,
We would adopt the findings and conclusions of the staff report.
like Scott said,
Mhm.
but also can ask the developer and city staff to work through potential roundabout easements
As a
in the
condition.
next phase as a condition of the approval of the concept plan. Is that good?
that was great.
Okay.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Buzzy, second by Emily, all in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next, we'll consider a development plan and preliminary plat for Canyon Grove subdivision, approximately 2.17 acres located at 2700 North, 400 East. The proposed subdivision includes 6 lots in the R112 zone and is being proposed to be subdivided using the density determinant method.
Okay, so this one might look a little bit more familiar to you as this is at the preliminary plat development plan phase. It's gone through a couple of naming iterations up till this point. It began as Clarkson Place and Green Canyon Grove. Ultimately, we said, hey, we've got too many things named Green something, Green Canyon. So let's maybe lop off the green and we'll call it Canyon Grove just so we don't confuse people. But yep, so this is a little sliver of land, right? There we go. Northeast, about 2750 north. And this particular project already has a recommendation from Planning Commission, a positive recommendation from Planning Commission for their development plan and preliminary plat. This was last summer when that occurred. And in the meantime, one of the conditions of that recommendation is that the developer hone in on their secondary water plan and come back with a final proposal. So this past year, the owner, Chris Carson, here, if you have any questions for him, he explored a couple of different options for secondary water, whether he would be able to pipe it from the canal across a couple of subdivisions and bring it to this location. Work with some of the property owners in Hyde Park, work with the mayor in Hyde Park, kind of explore those options, cost, participation with those adjacent landowners between the canal and this location. But ultimately settled on just going ahead and drilling a well. It would be a private well operated and managed by their HOA. So basically a private secondary water system. You can see the well location on the far right side there, the east side, that blue bullseye would be where the well site would be located. And then they would run a conveyance system through the road there and then laterals into each lot. So that was the one detail that we were waiting to get clarity on. The applicants already moved forward with that project to secure drilling, drill start card, those types of things. So that's the formal proposal. Again, this is a private lane as far as the road is concerned, given the unique shape and width of this parcel. A public street really wouldn't fit here, nor does the city need a public street because it's terminal. It doesn't connect into anything. So all of that private infrastructure will be owned and managed by the homeowners and the HOA going forward. Do you guys have any questions on where we've been and how we've gotten to this point? So this is kind of the last step, in a public meeting setting that this project would go through under our existing review process. Next, they would just go forward with the final plat and construction documents.
So I remember that when we talked about this previously, they will be responsible for plowing snow. How does garbage work?
So garbage it's going to be a little bit tricky. It is a narrower lane. It's not that it's impossible, but they do have the hammerhead for a truck to turn around. But if that proves to be problematic, then they'll have to take their cans out to the street on 4th East.
Okay.
I had one question too. It looks like the width's 24 feet. So are they not allowing any street parking? Because that would minimize it less than 20.
Yeah, I believe that there was some discussion on this. I think they have to put some no parking signage on one side of the street, if I remember. Does that sound familiar, Chris? I think it was
Okay.
a topic of discussion last
As
year.
long as you're
Planning
intending
Commission.
on not allowing parking on either side.
So that does apply to either side of the
That
lane?
does, yeah, do they need to put it on both sides
Yep.
though?
The signage,
The signage,
Yes.
paint all the
Would.
curbs red then?
they might have to stripe it as a fire lane. Chief, do you know if that's a requirement? I believe it would be.
It is.
But it's definitely a more narrow road. They will be putting a street light on the corner as well to help that access point, but
And that the fire lane aspect of it, or the no parking aspect of it, that's nothing that we impose. That's just existing.
yeah, that's a fire code requirement. And the
Okay.
hammerhead here had to meet fire turnaround requirements as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, then I would entertain a motion, and I'm assuming this is similar. We need to adopt the staff findings.
Yeah, findings and then any additional conditions that you might have.
And we're gonna take that on.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to phrase it right. This is gonna sound stupid. Okay, motion to approve the development plan for the Canyon Grove subdivision. Sorry, how do I phrase this next part?
Including the preliminary plat
Including the preliminary plat
based on the
And-
facts and findings of the staff report.
based on the facts and finding the staff report. Man, this is great.
Um,
Is that it? Did I get everything?
And any additional conditions you might want to add on.
I don't have, you just had listed the conditions there. Is that, as
So-
long as I said that the things you've already listed,
Yeah, adopt the staff report.
adopt the
That's
staff
what's in
report,
there. Yep.
conditions, okay.
Okay, great job, Emily.
Well, that was terrible, but yeah, thank you.
Getting better
I'll
at it.
second it.
Motion by Emily, second by Craig, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thanks, Scott. And then consideration of a city initiated zoning text amendment to the North Logan City Land Use Code and Design Standards Technical Manual. The proposed amendments are intended to facilitate the extension of master plan streets between individual developments and to incentivize superior connectivity between individual developments, and interconnectivity between existing and future developments.
Yep. So this is a text amendment. So we're kind of switching gears from administrative approvals of subdivisions to a legislative adjustment to our land use code. Alan, do you want to go to the second page in the staff report? There's an exhibit there. You guys are all familiar with Wildercrest, and we've kind of coined our existing rule, the Wildercrest rule, as far as access and egress from a subdivision. This is our almost 6,000 foot long single access street.
We call it a dead end.
Yeah, it's a dead end. It's a street network, right? A street route that is terminal.
Yeah.
So it kind of is, it's kind of it's a geographic term for an arm that extends out into the water a long way, almost like the
Peninsula?
peninsula. Yeah, it's our peninsula, right? So when we realized that we're getting a little bit too far for comfort as far as safety and egress and emergency situations, we looked at putting in a rule in our zoning code or subdivision code that limited access on a terminal street route to no more than 750 feet. It was kind of a quasi moratorium. Let's take a look at this. Let's put in a rule just so we don't keep adding on to this terminal street route. But we kind of knew at the time when we put that language together that we would need to come back and look at it again and figure out how do we facilitate extending streets on an iterative basis, one development at a time, in a predictable, planned methodology. So what we looked at is how do we ensure safe access on longer street routes that are terminal? Keeping in mind the fire road requirements, access egress, but also our master plan street network. How do we get those roads to connect with, with multiple ownership, individual developments happening, not exactly simultaneously? Alan, do you want to go to, did I put the transportation master plan in that meeting folder by chance?
No. You want me to go to that?
Yeah, if you can quickly, sorry.
Or you can just pull it up here.
If you go just to the North Logan City website under the engineering department, I think they've got just the PDF there. There we go, transportation master plan. Cool. And then if you want to just scroll into Orchard View in that area. So towards kind of the top right there,
1400, is that?
this
1400.
is, there we go, yeah,
Oh.
1800. See how it kind of makes that jog through, I call that no man's land, so to speak. We got multiple ownership, but it is a planned street route that will connect two points in our greater grid network. So right now, where Alan's mouse is, that is actually a new subdivision. That's Orchard View. And it terminates right at the bottom of that parcel right there. And measuring from the tip of the mouse to the next closest street there, that's 750 feet. So we have capped our ability to extend that street along that street route under our existing access rules of 750. So when we look back and say, how do we make the dots connect in a safe and predictable way? I actually looked back at a previous experience that I had worked on with some colleagues at Weber County. They actually had this same question, scratching their heads on how do we get these long streets to connect where we need them to connect, but in a safe manner, with keeping the fire code in mind. And so what we had put together is a classification of either a permanently terminal street or a cul-de-sac where it's never going to connect through anywhere, or a temporarily terminal street, where this one, for example, is temporarily terminal. It's stubbed to that southern boundary line, but is anticipated to expand beyond. And looking at the fire code, anything beyond 750 feet is permissible, but it requires special approval through the fire authority. And as we met with the fire department, both at the Weber County Fire District, but also here with our local fire district, we understood that it's primarily having to do with turnaround capacity, but also the number of homes that are along that street route. So 750 isn't the limit, it's the number of homes on the street route, and it is actually capped at 30 homes. So if, for example, you get to 30 homes, but you're beyond 750 feet per fire code, that's permissible. Once you get beyond 30 homes, you can continue along that street route with more homes as long as they're fire sprinkled beyond that point. And that's obviously not preferable. We would prefer a secondary access be connected. Most homeowners don't want to pay for that expense of a fire sprinkle system. From my understanding, they're pretty spendy. But what we can do is we can allow it to extend beyond 750 feet if those conditions are met. So you make a secondary access or you sprinkle beyond. But that allows us to extend beyond and get closer into this no man's land and get these dots to connect. So the proposal that we have spells that out. It makes those two classifications, this permanently terminal street with like a cul-de-sac, that is still proposed to be capped at 750 feet. But if it's temporarily terminal and it is also along a master plan street route, we would allow for it to go beyond 750, but with those fire restrictions kept in mind. So once we hit that 30th home, if that's at 1,000 feet, then you got to start sprinkling the home or provide that secondary egress route to connect back into the street grid.
Sprinkle the home, but is that one applicable to a master plan road?
It would be on anything that is beyond 30 homes on that terminal street route.
Okay.
So I didn't read this directly or well enough, but you're saying that this would allow us to allow sprinkled homes even beyond 750.
Correct.
if it wasn't on a master planned connection.
So if it's not a master
Temporary
plan,
terminal is what you
yeah,
used.
if it's not master plan, then you can go up to 30. But if you get up to that point, 30 is the cap. Anything beyond that has to be sprinkled.
Okay, so just going back to history on this, 7 years ago, when we took this up in planning ingress egress, the number of homes was what we intended. I remember it really clear there. The length of the road came in later and it took some of us by surprise, and I get why it happened because we had, revisited fire code at that point.
Mhm.
I mean, I like the idea of the number of houses. I just don't think we ever considered sprinkled homes, Craig, and maybe you can give us an opinion here, but I don't know why we would go above 30. I'm okay with the length, but the original intent was the number regardless of sprinkled, but
That is an allowance in the fire code. I've never seen anybody take it. Most people fight tooth and
It's
nail
expensive.
against the
Yeah.
sprinklers in homes.
So is it like a theoretical option, but not a likely one?
It is if the dollars and cents make sense for that developer to then sprinkle all those homes. So they're basically selling the lot to someone who has to, correct me from, I think they're like $30,000 for a sprinkler system somewhere
I
in that
never get
ballpark.
into the finance side of it.
How much
I
is
have to
it?
They're like
inquire.
30 grand. Last time I heard, they're not cheap.
But I've never seen anybody take that option.
I mean, honestly,
Or this, in this situation, I've seen them take the option to sprinkle in other conditions, lack of water, lack of access, but not as an overall development plan like this.
I'm just thinking, the thing that's strange to me about this is, and maybe we can use, let's just use 2600 North as an example. So if we're at 30 homes and they're all on the west side and there's enough, you go a couple acres east for that one home that's sprinkled now because it's at 31. I'm just not sure where the practical application of that is. That road could be 8,000 feet long, or we could run a scenario where it's even longer and then you've got a home far away.
yeah, they would
but you
all have to
may-
be sprinkled and they would still have to meet all the turnaround requirements for a
Right.
fire access road.
But you've got the homes that are maybe a half mile further west that hit 31 and 32, and they then have to be sprinkled, but their neighbors right next to them don't.
Yeah.
It's
You
kind of
can
a
always
bizarre
Strike
application.
that option out and just say,
Yeah.
when you hit 30 homes, you
You-
need a second access.
You can do that.
That's the
That's
way
what I
I,
would-
yeah.
I would prefer
That's
that.
what
That, I would recommend that too. The
That's
one or
what
two
that's my
times that
preference.
people have come in and requested sprinkled homes. It was somewhat naive when they came in, what Craig's talking about. We said this may be an option with fire code. We were trying to look for different options to help people get that development. But then when they looked into the cost of sprinkling home, and then the fact that if a fire were ever to start in their home and their whole home would be flooded probably immediately after that, they really just don't take that option. It was
Yeah.
very difficult for
Yeah.
them.
I like.
So
that's
it's
a
not
good
really
point,
worth it.
Betsy and Craig.
Yeah, I like it that way too. And I think, we've seen a lot of this, especially where the 750 becomes a big hindrance where it wasn't intended to be. There's a couple lots on 16th East I can think of, homeowners there that might have future development on just their own property. And but I personally would say that we strike the fire sprinkling option, just cap it at 30 without a length, or how you stated
Once you
it.
get to
I mean,
30, you
there's-
have to have
yeah.
the secondary
Yeah.
egress. Yeah, so I guess letter of the law with the fire code, you could use that sprinkler allowance if you really wanted to, but you're not obligated to.
Our code would still have to allow for it though, right? So if
Mhm.
we just said that's not an option in our code.
Yep.
Okay.
So my other question, this always kind of is hard for me to visualize, but so like with this one, we contemplate, like we measure the 750 from, I believe that's Canyon Ridge Drive, right? But that's not actually, like, that's actually not, like, we're still all feeding into 3100 North right there.
So
So-
Canyon-
They have a,
You
Yeah.
can go up.
they have a secondary that goes.
Yeah,
there's another point of egress, you kind of
There's
go up
actually
and around.
4 different access points.
Well, because I guess what I'm wondering is like, say that, like, let's take it down further into Wildecrest, like where Buzzy
Yeah.
is. So what? How, like, could there be another spoke? For lack of a better term, like where do you measure it from? Like, so say,
It'd be
Right,
that-
right.
just choose anywhere. Could they build up the mountain if they wanted to?
From that point up.
No.
No,
They're
they
maxed out
We've
at
had
30
that.
homes.
Yeah. There's
Okay,
some building going on there, but they were grandfathered in under a earlier development agreement.
Yeah.
okay, but like, I guess I'm just saying, where do you count the 30 homes
You
from?
count it from
Right, where it's
your
been
last
listed.
option to have 2 means of
Correct.
egress.
Where it starts to become terminal, where you no longer have a secondary point of egress.
So Lindsay, right where his mouse is,
Yeah.
is right where that's the Oldham's house, right? And that's where now you can either go west or north to get out of. And you have
Okay.
access to.
You'd have to
34th there
backtrack all the way back
increase.
to that point before you
Yeah.
had a secondary choice to take it out.
And then start counting the homes from there.
Yeah, which is way more than 30, because this was previous, but yeah.
Okay, but I like, and again, I feel dense about this, but you're still, even though you can go west or did you say north?
Yeah.
You're still feeding, like, you're still counting on Canyon Ridge to get out of there.
Actually, it goes 2 or 3 different ways. Once you get
Yeah.
down here, you can go out this way.
You can head
you
north
go
into Hyde
south.
Park.
Past Palomino Circle.
Yeah, there's about 2 true routes. And then once you get down closer to 16th, there's 4, but 2 true routes to get out of there.
Okay.
3025
some
and
questions, too.
Canyon Ridge Drive.
Still don't know if I
Had to wrap
could
your head
explain
around.
it to someone, but, okay. So can you also, Scott, just kind of point me in this to where it talks about, is it access road or like, is there an actual reference to master plan roads?
Yes, so if you look on page 18 of the staff report,
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I was looking at the previous one. So I guess I haven't seen the proposed language. Okay.
yeah, so that's where we would allow you to go up to 30 homes beyond. So if it is, as long as it's capped at 30, you could go beyond 750 as long as it's on that master plan street.
Got
route.
it.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's, actually, that's just talking about in general, when you have a subdivision that is in the vicinity of a master plan street. If you look on starting on page 20, this is where we separate the terminal streets from either a permanently terminal street or a temporarily terminal street. So under that temporarily terminal street, where it's a dead end, but it's planned to go beyond,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we're talking about. Flip over to 21. Page 21, number 2, top of the page, runs along the general alignment of a future street as shown in an applicable general plan, small area plan. Basically a legislatively adopted planning document for transportation's sake. Then we would allow for that road to continue along that planned trajectory as long as you don't go beyond that 30, or as it's currently drafted, you could go beyond 30 if it's sprinklered. So depending on if we decide to strike that or not.
Could we, I would prefer to strike that specifically.
That would should be our motion.
So,
I agree.
With when it's a future street, is that kind of a term of art that is modified? I just want to make sure we're completely clear about this. A future street.
Yeah,
As
as shown
shown,
in an
okay.
applicable, so that exhibit, we had that master transportation plan, that is a legislatively adopted document in our
Okay.
general plan.
And will that be impacted by the new general plan then?
It could be.
Okay.
This will stay substantially similar. We may make some adjustments in the general plan process, but this is our current master transportation plan.
Okay.
We can't just change this willy-nilly. Anytime we want to make an adjustment, we have to bring it before you as a legislative adopted change.
And the planning commission.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Scott, if you'll pass along, like, I know that the planning commission's done the heavy lifting on this and just pass along our thanks, because I know this has been something we've been grappling with for,
Well,
a long time.
I have to say, luckily, we are not the first community to try to create this, and I'm glad I had the experience to work on this in a past role where they scratched their head on this for a couple of years. They worked very closely with their fire district and trying to understand, because in an unincorporated county, they have very expansive
Yeah.
road networks
Yeah.
that they don't have as often of connections to the street network. So yeah, they have some terminal street routes that are miles long.
I'm just curious when I know this was relatively recent with
Yep.
Weber County, but do you know, did anyone take you up on the sprinkling?
Not within the time that I was there. And again, I think
Okay.
it's one of those things you can, but really everybody's going to try to not.
I mean, I was just
I have
curious.
seen a
but-
lot of homes sprinkled here
Yeah.
in the valley.
Hmm.
It's usually for a different option.
Lack
Most
of
of the ones
water.
I've seen has been an option where they don't have inadequate access by width or by the steepness of the driveway, but most of the time it's by lack of water. They
Mhm.
don't have enough water supply in their hydrant system
Or pressure.
to the size of structure and construction type they want to build.
Right.
And then that option comes in. The Providence Bench has extremely large homes, very poor water. Almost
Mhm.
every one of those are fire sprinkled.
Really?
Interesting.
Okay, well, I mean, I agree with Buzzy and Emily and everyone on this one, that I think if it's not a true even remedy, it makes sense to kind of just foreclose it, because I think the number of houses, you're right, Buzzy, that was more the discussion.
Do you want me to take a crack at this? It looks good. I
Yeah.
mean, I reviewed it all this week, or do you have more that you want to?
Well, I want to make sure you guys understand there's one more provision that we
Oh.
added in here as an idea. That's kind of unrelated to this access and length of terminal street routes, but it has to do with an incentive, a zoning incentive to try to work with developers to gain superior connectivity in a way that does not kind of go beyond what is permissible as an exaction. Where we give them a little bit of a bonus density to make superior street connections, where we kind of both win, where we say, hey, you don't have to make this connection to get frontage on all of your lots, but it would be tremendously helpful for the overall connectivity of the community, pedestrian connections, whether it's trails or what have you. But to do so, typically a developer would lose a lot or two to make those connections, and there's no incentive for them to do so when they're already able to provide street frontage to their lots as proposed. So it's basically a tool in our zoning ordinance or our subdivision ordinance that would say, you guys work with us to give us superior connectivity above what would traditionally be required. And we'll give you that little bit of that area, that square footage back in the form of your base density. So maybe you get one more lot if you make those connections for us. So it's kind of a win-win. We don't have to worry about a disproportionate exaction. But so the city gets what they need and the community gets a better connection. Developer doesn't feel materially harmed. And it's worked in past jurisdictions. So felt like this is a good opportunity to go ahead and slide this in as part of this proposal.
What would just kind of help me wrap my head around what that, the kind of square footage or acreage that would result in?
Yeah. So the way that it's drafted right now, it does not allow for a developer to get out of street connections that are already required. So if there's a
Yeah.
master plan street going through their parcel, they already have to provide that as part of our master transportation plan. We can exact that without any, that's just required of them at the time of development. Same with trails, if it's not on our trail plan, but we think, hey, this is actually a really good opportunity to add a trail here. We can't really exact it if it's not on a planning document, but we may see the opportunity and say, hey, we would love to get a trail here. And the developer would say, well, I know you'd like to, but I don't technically have to. What we would say is if it's a planned street or trail system, they have to give us that no matter what. That's just required of all developers if it's a planned connection. But what we're saying, if maybe there's an opportunity to make another connection that they don't need to provide frontage or to provide access to the lots that they're planning, but to do so would make them have to take that acreage or square footage out of their buildable area. And so the way the incentive is drafted is it would allow them to take that area used for the connectivity and give them back that in their base density calculation. So they may get an extra lot out of it. It depends on the size. And
But like, I just am, so like with the Orchard Estates, because that's the one that we kind of discussed that I think the developer wanted to create a longer road right there.
Yeah.
Like say that he's adding.
Would have added, I guess.
In that type of a zoning classification where it's 1 acre minimums, probably not, because the size of that development was a little bit smaller. They might not have actually gotten a lot out of it. But depending on how the math shakes out, if they were 0.51 in the calculation, our ordinance allows them to round up to a full lot. So it's kind of on a project by project basis, depends on how many acres we're dealing with, how many lots are allowed per acre, and then how much acres would have to be reduced in order to provide that superior connectivity that we could then give back to them in the form of a bonus. So they're allowed to have slightly smaller lots, like in a density determinant subdivision or a bonus subdivision. But we'll have to see how it works to see if the math is working out as a true incentive, if they actually take the deal, so to speak, because it works out for them and their benefit.
Yeah, you almost have to kind of test that out if you're in the sweet spot where, we're not getting significantly denser lots.
And also the way that it's drafted, we're not allowing it in the RE5 zone because there's just no point. So it's in the smaller zones, R110, R112, 15. You might actually see a benefit or an incentive workout for a developer and the city.
Okay.
So we'll see. It may just sit there, might not get used, and we'll kind of look at it and we'll see, well, why didn't it get used? Or the ratio's off? Is it not enough of an incentive to?
But is
work?
that based on code you've seen?
Mhm.
The terminology. Okay.
Yeah, we kind of backwards engineered this as a project I worked on in the past where they were just right out of the sweet spot. We wanted to get a street to connect through, but it would reduce their subdivision by a lot. So we saw that, oh man, it'll be cool to have a tool if we could
Oh.
give that back to them and have a win-win here.
Hmm.
So we ultimately allowed them to have substandard lots, legal lots, but substandard to the zoning just ever so slightly in order to get that connection to work out. But we went back and crafted this tool as a way to legitimize it on the front end instead of on the back end.
Okay.
I like it,
Dusty,
yeah.
or sorry, Buzzy, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I will. Okay, so I motion that we approve the amendment to the North Logan City Land Use Code and Design Standards Technical Manual as provided by city staff, with the exception that we strike the exception for above 30 homes with sprinkling included. So wiped out from the option, and that we maximize cap the actual subdivision at 30, or it's not a single subdivision, but cap the homes at 30 without exception
Along that street route.
along that street route.
All right, motion by Buzzy. Good job.
Second.
Second by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thanks again, Scott.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll move on to consider approval of a draft municipal fiscal year 2024 budget. Alan, are you going to address this one?
Yeah, the state code, we're one of the unique communities. I think Damon caught this in his reading, Damon Can, former mayor, that municipalities are supposed to draft or adopt a draft budget in their first meeting in May each year. Because we're all in the same fiscal year. It's a July 1st to June 30th fiscal year. And so as we look through the budget at this time, this is a draft budget. We've gone through each of the different department heads and their draft budget proposals as we've gone through the past few months. What you're looking at is the current draft budget now, but I'll let you know that between now and our public hearing, which will occur at the first meeting in June. We usually have our first meeting in June as the public hearing. We don't adopt it then because that would be disingenuous to say, let's have a public hearing and then just adopt it right afterwards without taking the public's input into account. And so it's usually the meeting after that when the actual budget is adopted. But this is a draft budget. Not much has changed. There's been a few minor edits here and there. You might see a few additional changes that I will point out at the January 6th meeting or January 5th, somewhere through there.
June?
June. Sorry. Wow. No long day. But we'll look at those. I'll point those out. We'll highlight them. Any additional changes. A lot of those changes might be more along the lines of capital, whereas we've received things like the $1 million grant for sewer. The mayor lined up. Those types of things need to be allocated in a specific line in capital. So they're dedicated to that line and how we account for those. Those will be the highlights. Those will be the main focus in the next month. And then also just trimming each budget down. We're about 30,000 from balancing right now. And so that would be the goal over the next month to get to that number.
How normal is that?
That's very abnormal. Normally when all the department heads submit their budgets, we're at about 700,000 over budget. And then we spend the next month trimming those down. This year we were about 150,000 over. And then we slowly just trimmed it away down to where we are now. And so, but keep in mind with depreciation and capital and a few other lines, being in the 0 to about 100,000 over, I hate to even put that is technically balancing, meaning at the end of the year, we will balance. And so we don't ever want to go over that. That's very dangerous. And so basically just in that range. And so by the next meeting, you'll see maybe some slight modifications to that. And then also the big projects that come up, a big project being a city office, but that really doesn't change much in our budget as to where we are because we've already allocated those funds. And then roads projects, because those come out of the general fund. And so one's related to impact fees, one's not related to impact fees. Those are the big tweaks at this point in the budget. So I'm just trying to highlight the anticipated changes and I'll highlight those in the June meeting.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on this? I mean, we talk ad nauseum about the budget. So,
Yeah.
and let's see. So we are going to be considering approval of this.
Yeah, it's approval of a draft budget, which doesn't take place by resolution, but your next one will.
Okay, so I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a proposal that we approve the draft municipal budget for 2024.
Motion by Craig,
Second,
second by Roger, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Alan. And then do we need to,
You don't exit, you just move into.
okay, I would entertain a motion to move into the redevelopment agency.
Motion to move to redevelopment.
Motion by Buzzy.
Second.
Second by, I'll say Craig. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're now an RDA. I assume very
We need to
similar.
adopt the agenda.
Do we need to discuss
You need
this?
to adopt the agenda.
Oh, I would entertain a motion to adopt that
Motion
agenda.
to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Emily, second by Buzzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then,
I'll make a motion, we go back to normal city council.
wait, we have to,
Please don't second that one. We still need to
Go back.
adopt.
we need to adopt
I
it.
got ahead of you.
All right, do you want to make that motion, Craig?
Yes.
Okay, so motion by Craig to adopt the draft RDA budget.
Second.
Second by Buzzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And the
Okay.
only major
Roger,
edits,
it's your turn.
the only major edits you would see throughout this year, it's tough to anticipate with an RDA budget. But you'll probably see something similar in the June adoption of the RDA. If you choose to do so, but then throughout this year, it depends on what businesses come in and what incentives are offered through the RDA. You might see some revisions at that time. This is a budget that's really tough to anticipate. So at that time we'd have public hearing, we'd go before the city council, discuss those items as they come through. So just a heads up on this budget. And then if, yeah, it's now referred to as a CRA, Community Reinvestment Area. But the acronym is the exact same thing.
Okay, so we'll revive Craig's motion to what?
No, he was wanted to exit. So
Yeah.
yes, now you need to
Now
exit.
we
So-
return to city council.
Just return to.
Okay,
Close
so
RDA.
Craig has motion to return to,
Did they already adopt it? Did you already adopt it?
we did,
Yeah.
yeah. So Craig has motion to reconvene as city council, second by
Emily.
Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll get better at that, you guys. Okay, then we'll move on to consider the authorization or the authorizing the signing of an agreement regarding the ongoing maintenance for a portion of the city-owned open space located at 2250 East, 2700 North.
Yeah, I'll go through this fairly quickly. Let me go back to the map. So back in the day, subdivisions, when they came through about, 30 years ago to 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when they came through and they utilized what was called the bonus density subdivision method. There's a lot of open space and open areas throughout the city that were then just turned over to the city. So you saw a lot of drainage ways and they were used in their bonus density calculation, which we have learned since is not the actual way to do these types of subdivisions. Anyways, as we went through there, a lot of open space throughout the city was turned over to the city. This is one of those things where it looked good on paper and worked really well on paper, but in actual practicality was not very good. What was left over were properties where they basically just turn into a large weed area where weeds grow, they become a nuisance property. The city doesn't utilize them for a lot of things. And so as you go down and you look at these types of properties, one property owner, the Rainies who live here, discussed, are there any options? And this is not unique. We have frequent requests regarding these items. Most people want a giant chunk of land behind them though, and they want the city to gift it to them and they can just use it as yard. This is more just a general concern as far as the city goes of looking at this park strip right here, because this property owner right here, as the subdivision went in, they landscaped this entire area with rock. And so they kind of xeriscape design this back portion and they put rock in this area. That is adjacent to their property, but that is city property. And then as you go north from there, the proposal would be to take this park strip, do something similar with rock, but then also put some trees in there. And then this portion right here that you see along the edge. And what it would be is basically just putting in some landscaping, some trees to make it look nice. And in lieu of that, North Logan City would provide certain things. We would provide some of the rock to do this. And then we would also give them a water credit. to extend their irrigation system to water these trees in the xeriscaped area, and kind of an additional administrative fee to basically run this and run the lines up there. This is a unique agreement as far as what you're seeing, but it's not unique in that we have done this in different areas. So one of the key aspects that someone put in here as we went through here, I think it was Jordan, that this does not set a precedent for other open spaces. Each one will have to be considered in a very unique aspect because they're all very unique. There's different circumstances with different open spaces you go throughout the city. This did look like an opportunity to try to clean up some of the things that we probably won't have happen in the future, but we do have throughout the city. We have a large number of open spaces. So this is kind of a trial run to see how this works. There's details in here that this agreement's not transferable. This runs with the Rainies. If they were moved out of their home, a new agreement would have to be considered with the city council. There was some comment, and I missed them, by a resident until this afternoon, but they're very valid comments. A question regarding a trail that comes through here. Let me go to the map. There's a trail that's intended to come up from the Power Line or Centennial Trail and connect all the way up to the future Bonneville Shoreline Trail. And that is actually on our master plan. And so that stays within this agreement doesn't negate that. It would be part of that. I wish I would have seen that earlier. So sorry to Alexa. But this doesn't negate that. That would still have to take place. And at some future portion, the city or future date, the city does decide to put that on, we can go right through and just put that trail where it's intended to be installed within this open space. This doesn't transfer property in any way. We still fully own the property. Even the property that's installed there, because this has happened in the past where city officials tell people to just beautify the open space. People will plant trees galore along the edges of that. And then they will be upset if we come in and modify the basin at all because they were their trees.
Mhm.
And so this clarifies that these trees do not belong to the resident. Even if they do pay for them, install them, they belong to the city at that point. So we've tried to put this together. Obviously it's unique. I don't know if you had any questions regarding any aspects of this agreement or proposed agreement.
I guess the only question that's a valid area that needs to be addressed, but I'm concerned why we're making them pay for the trees when it's city property. Aren't we already benefiting from the city to have those trees put there? What's the benefit for them?
Looks like
purchase
it's
those trees?
$32.50
For them,
per
it's just
month.
beautification. And for us, we just don't have the money. And so we're basically saying, if you can pay for it, put it in, and then they would just maintain it. And then the reimbursement of the water bill over time would probably help pay for some.
Okay, I see. So that's part of what you intend is
Yeah, the
cost of trees
administrative.
long term. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm
that's-
assuming this is kind of, so we've talked about the open space areas in Canyon Ridge.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of an example where is it or is it not? Because
This is an example of what can take place. What you're bringing up is an entirely different issue with the same set of issues. The issues being weeds. There's open spaces. They're just owned by the city. What do we do? This is another area that we talked about ad nauseum with the city council, trying to come up with solutions. And one of the solutions that was recommended was the actual property behind each home be extended and meet in the middle of the drainage way. A trail would go through there. There were just so many factors at that time that it never went through. It had legs. We talked about it extensively about 10 years ago, but it never actually went through because there were some hurdles and there were some issues regarding if it is their property, are they going to start putting endless amounts of landscape items in there, thus blocking the drainage and not having the same capacity of drainage. This whole area, even though the water just barely comes through the bottom in a horrible 100-year storm, that's because this entire area is used as drainage capacity. The water seeps into the ground along the entire extent of the drainage. And so there's a myriad of factors that go into it. But Mayor's bringing up a common problem throughout this area.
But I guess I just mean in the sense that one thing that we talked about is having it be property owner led. Like
Yes.
if they propose a solution that kind of clears those hurdles, but put the onus more on the property owners. Because I know that's
Correct.
kind of what we decided in that specific area that you just highlighted is to, just ask.
And I kind of would like to see this one go, see how this one goes. And so we can
Yeah, because the stakes
correct
seem
another thing,
low.
those big long drainages, over there.
Yeah.
If we have some breaks in there, because it's always a fire danger, in my opinion. You have those steep slopes, especially in the fall when that's all dry grass.
Yes.
You'll have fire that can move up those drainages rapidly that we won't be able to catch.
That's
And
a good point.
so any,
Yeah.
a property owner that's willing to have some irrigation, some green grass or some fire breaks through those would be helpful.
And this, you brought up the perfect point. When we first consider this, we've kind of tried not to consider these because there's so many of them. This one was more of a city resident initiative to try and see it. And we were trying to say, as long as it's not a super large area and as long as you can be a guinea pig, if you're okay with that, that's what we would propose to the city council.
Okay. And is that credit, that's indefinite, the 32.50 per month?
Yes, just because that was what was proposed and they kind of arm wrestled back and forth. So they came to a dollar value that would kind of cover a lot of the improvements
Yeah,
over
that
time.
makes sense now, yeah.
Take care of it
Okay.
at the duration.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it's only during the summer months. This
Credit
credit does
year,
not
right?
apply to the winter months at all.
okay,
It's kind of somewhat related on in other areas on that bench where there's who has weed, the city has weed control, right? So like behind the homes on my road, you've got that
Mhm.
city owned space and then the cemetery. So the city has to be responsible for knocking down the weeds there and maintaining of that area.
Yes, how good of a job we do is another
I
question.
don't- Not necessarily calling that out, honestly. I'm just curious to make sure, because I know that was part of the discussion was extending a lot of that property.
Yes.
I don't know that it's worth it to everybody, but
And
it
in
becomes
some
a city
areas, though,
burden.
it does make sense. So each of these are so unique and Buzzy brings up a very valid point in looking at each different area as a unique factor and whether there's storm drainage in that area, whether there's fire potential,
Yeah.
all the other myriad of factors that go into this, all need to be considered at that point. And then, what was I going to say regarding these particular areas back here? Right now, we do have a fee. We normally contract with the county to come in and spray these areas. So they take care of the noxious weeds. But it's still not it could be much better.
honestly,
kind of
I really,
left
I
with-
believe it or not, I wasn't criticizing. I was more curious, just. know.
I'm critical, so I'll be critical. Buzzy.
I think that this would be a good, like, this is a good testing. I think the stakes are pretty low and
Yeah, I agree.
so, okay, then I would entertain a motion on this.
I'll propose that we adopt the signing of the agreement between the ongoing space portion. It's called Open Space Beautification Agreement with property owners at 2250 East, 2700 North.
Okay, you will authorize, you're motioning to authorize the signing.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Roger, second by Buzzy, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. All right, we'll move on to the city council work session items. The first is discussion regarding the city's disproportionate business license fee as it relates to fitness related facilities and large retail businesses. Alan, do you want to give us the background on this one?
Yeah, I can go over it briefly. How familiar is everyone with the disproportionate business license? Do you know how roughly how it functions and why it was created? Just so we don't have to go over that
I
portion.
think so, because I think you three were around for it and then Emily knows.
Emily's good. She gets
She's
caught
on
up
it.
very quickly.
I called him today. Don't give me any credit. I literally was like, yep, because he likes me better than you.
Moving on. But what we're looking at, the general gist of this is that by doing this, you establish through a lengthy study that's required by the state, you establish a base level of service per category of business. It's not specific business, it's category of business, which they go into subcategories. But the city council went through and they established the base level based off of historic data this is solely for EMS, just to clarify. We have looked at police, but our disproportionate business license fee is just for fire and EMS right now. But what it allocates is 1 call per month, which is actually above the average. Most businesses are 0, but 1 call per month. And then anything above 1 call per month over each quarter is billed. If they exceed that, then they are charged the disproportionate business license fee, which is pretty pricey. Each call is around $280 per call. As you look through this, though, what we're looking at now, the intent and the spirit of the intent I think we wrote, or we've gone through this. The spirit of the intent was that where businesses can reduce their number of calls through any business practice possible, that's what the overall intent was. I can tell you now that the business license fee worked very well with several businesses. They reduced their calls. But when we brought this before you a few years ago, we had a particular business that could only reduce their calls so much. They'd gone down to a point where they couldn't even reduce them anymore. And so this city council at that time changed their base allocation to 3 per month because they could not get below that. They tried, they did everything in their power to get to that level. Hats off to them, but they couldn't get below that. And so they've tried to stay below that. And for the most part, they have. They've gone over it a few times since then. They've stayed below their 3 per month. Other businesses have not. And so they incur the fee each month when they exceed those. But what we're seeing now is we have some fitness related facilities and large retail where they exceeded by 1, 2, or 3 over that 3-month period. So you're looking at 5, 6 calls. So they have their 3 that they're allocated, but then they've gone above that by 3 or 4 calls, or 1 or 2. And so in talking with them, they're basically at a level right now where they may or may not be able to even reduce that any further, just because they put in every practice that they can think of, and they've added personnel, and they can't get below that certain level. And so the question now would be, looking at a potential, I just want to discuss this with you and see what your feeling would be in looking at 2 or 3 different categories when we bring it before you as a formal resolution or a potential resolution, and adding maybe a base of 2 per month. And so they look at that too, and then they would stay below their allocation. They wouldn't have a fee every quarter, and they could stay below that conceivably because they basically lowered as much as they can. There's other businesses that we know that have several calls. I'm talking 15 to 20, 25 calls per month that we know for a fact can reduce down to 0 or 1 call per month. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about businesses that are around 1 to 2 per month, that's as low as they can go, and they can't stay there, or they can't go any lower.
I mean, that's exactly what we intended when we put this into place.
Yes.
You know, so I'm actually happy, and hopefully some business owners would be happy too, to see that we were honest when we talked about this a couple of years ago, that we would do baselining and that we would adjust where necessary. And I think this is exactly what we intended and what we promised back then. And it makes a lot of sense. We knew we were being abused in some areas,
Yes.
you know, and that was what we were trying to get in control. So I know we're not looking for approval, but I would definitely be in supportive of
Coming back
change
with
like
maybe
that.
a base level, a
Yeah.
proposed base level, and then the city council can debate about what that appropriate base level is. We can provide more data regarding that.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I agree with Buzzy. I wasn't around with the original discussion on this.
Getting old, Mayor. I just
Is that
realized.
it?
Yeah.
But I think that's helpful insight about, kind of the mindset of the council at the time, that we're not trying to dissuade businesses from calling 911 for legitimate things. But we do want them to provide the staff, especially with assisted care facilities, and where we can use that to induce responsible behavior, I guess.
Yeah, and it has worked in this regard. The key is what we wanted from the beginning of this is not money. We wanted reduced number of calls. And so-
Similar to like a water, like incentivizing
Yeah,
water
we
reduction.
don't want more money. We want
Yeah.
less water usage.
Okay, any other thoughts on this? I think generally, I think we generally feel great about that.
Great. And let me know. We'll bring it before the city council to discuss this. We'll probably have to have a public hearing because it's a master fee schedule update. So we'll talk about that in the next few
Okay.
weeks.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Okay, we'll move on to discussion regarding the filing period for candidates for city council. What's the word, Scott?
Okay. There's 3 seats that will be open for election. It'd be Roger's seat, Buzzy's seat, and Craig's seat. The filing period will be Thursday, June 1st through Wednesday, June 7th. And I'll have the packets ready a week before that for any candidates that want to file.
Is that typically what we do is like a week?
That's state mandate.
Okay.
So, and then we ought to think about what we want to do for Meet the Candidates Night. Usually we do that after the primary election and before the general election. And
Scott, I think there's a lot of interest. Are we considering a meet the candidates for the primary election too? Okay.
Or would that be like doing both, or would we be doing it just the one time?
that's something we need to decide between now and June if we're going to do the primary.
Is that same night where, like Meet the Candidate Night is where they ask the questions
They
to
ask the
the
questions
youth council?
And each candidate answers the question
Okay,
in sequence.
yeah, I think maybe we'll have to,
You get above
Kind of-
6,
Yeah.
it can get
it
kind of,
gets a little bit
nuts.
long
okay.
because you only can ask about 12 questions in an hour and a half.
I'm also wondering if there's like, I thought that the town hall kind of meetings were helpful. To at least just provide a forum. I can't remember exactly how those worked, but maybe even just something informal where you just say, this is where the candidates will be at their, optionally. And just give them basically a forum, but maybe not, like for sure do a meet the candidate night. But maybe that's an additional thing that we could do if there happen to be a lot of candidates for
Do
these
some more
positions.
informal
That's not a bad
stuff
idea.
for like
Yeah.
the
I like the Elk
primary?
Creek Pavilion.
Yeah,
Invite
or the
everybody
Green
out.
Canyon one. I know we've done that, and then I know we've done it at Meadowview too, so.
And then
The pickleball courts.
if we have a night for questions and answers, I'd like to kind of figure that out fairly quickly so that I can ask the youth council to be there.
Help them come up with the questions for that night, is that what
Well,
you mean?
No, ask them, make sure that they're available for.
Oh, okay.
So
So I would say, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say continue to do that around October. I think that's.
well, yeah, let's see. Trying to remember when
I know that one was mid-October, the last go around.
Yeah, it makes sense. They were
the
kind of right
mail
before-
in is actually 21 days in advance of, the ballots go out 21 days in advance of.
So the third would be a good one.
So maybe
So
the,
it'd have to be towards the beginning of October, the end of September.
I think that's great.
Okay. So I'll plan a question and
Just kind of
answers
thinking of it,
after.
Scott,
After the primary, but before the general. And then an open forum for the primary election.
yeah, and I like Tuesdays because a lot of the Green Canyon fall events, like I know football falls on Thursday, you got like JV and freshmen and seems like we get better attendance the earlier in the week in the fall that we do some of these.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay,
I'll look
I
at
think
the-
that's
I'll
great.
look mainly at Tuesdays then. during
Okay.
that timeframe.
I think that's great. And then we'll kind of see how what the field's like, the field of candidates. In terms of maybe scheduling another, like maybe less formal night for meet the candidates.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay, we'll move on to discussion regarding Logan City's green waste fee. Alan?
Just a quick update on this. I know we spoke about this at the last city council, and there were some kind of questions going back and forth. Logan City initially implemented a $1 fee to every resident on your garbage bill for green waste, and it was for the green waste bins in each park. Since then, they've kind of clarified that, you could say, by saying that 50 cents of that was for the bins and 50 cents was to process the green waste at the site. And so they've informed all the different cities that they will be reimbursing the 50-cent fee from January of 2023 going forward until October. That is when the Waste Consortium starts contracting with the private waste hauler. And then at that point, it's kind of undetermined, but they basically indicated that you'll have to pay to take green waste to the green waste site, is what they've indicated. They don't have a dollar amount yet. However, in reimbursing those fees, That is a extremely difficult task. So we worked with them these past 2 weeks. They've reimbursed North Logan City and each of the cities just a flat dollar amount for January through March. That's great, but that is nigh impossible to figure out how to reimburse each separate account holder. Keeping in mind that they bill per door if you have a dumpster. So if you're in an apartment complex and there's 200 doors, they are billing per door in those areas. So we don't account for that, and we have to figure out how to reimburse that to those entities. Luckily, Debbie's been working very hard on this and found a way through our software company, our accounting software, where we can actually do this. And so in the next few months, you'll get questions. I imagine some of you have received questions. We've received questions of the office about what's the city going to do to help reimburse this. A lot of cities are not reimbursing this. I'll just clarify that across the valley. They're just basically saying the money comes back to the city and they'll use it going forward. North Logan City, I would recommend that we do reimburse that back to the residents, even though it is $1.50. It's the principle of the matter, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so we figured out a way in the last 2 days. So
Oh,
sorry,
that's
by the
amazing.
time we came here, this was Debbie working very hard to get this to go through. And so if people ask, it'll probably take about a month to figure out how to do this, but they'll be reimbursed that. And then going forward, they will only be charged 50 cents on their bills going forward.
Oh, great. Thank Debbie for that. That's awesome. I think it's good in principle as well to
Yeah.
just pass that along.
The one thing, and maybe we can discuss further. I've had some trees removed, and this guy from Preston D's Trees, and he has a big grapple service, and he's met with 3 communities, and he's come up with a bid where, I'm not recommending this, but he's charging $300 per day. He'll come and empty the trees out. And you talk about like dumping in culverts and stuff, but there's could be some discussion to some of that money go to what its intended purpose was. So we don't reimburse it. We have that thing. I don't know how the spring cleanup will go, but is that a way we could keep that money in there and have he's saying he'll pick up from the bin and kind of do the work that we're saying we don't want our city people to do because it's so messy, but it is hard where we're in Logan. This is like Hiram. So we're right on the, I understand we're right near Hyde Park and Logan and North, where we get a lot of, I don't know, that's maybe to look at that. I don't know.
So we've looked at those options in the past. We've gone over each of the options. The options you brought up is a viable one to look at. We looked through that. The other very viable option that we really looked at length was actually just composting it ourselves and trying to sell it. Those are probably the 2 most viable options as we went through this to provide this service. Neither one, though, as we looked through it, even got close to penciling. Meaning the city would be subsidizing it by a large amount every month. Logan, because of the sheer magnitude and by mixing it with solid waste coming from the mechanical treatment plant, is the only way that they get close to breaking even on their green waste operations. And so it was.
And the
very
thing
expensive.
I think keep on hitting up against is just manpower, right? Like
Yeah.
in monitoring it, and it's kind of just tricky. Anyway,
Yeah.
I appreciate it,
Yeah,
but
It's gonna be a big
I knew it was
issue.
out there because it's almost like even if you offered it through May, June, July, or like a couple months, then most of them are cleaned up, and then you do some of that money near the end when they're cleaning up from. And I'm not saying it's a consistent summer thing. So maybe the idea is there's that money there, and then the money goes to that intended purpose of green waste, And I know that our garbage service company says we can look at different things. So maybe before you reimburse it, if they come up with a proposed plan that says this is a way we can do green waste, I don't think it's bad to hold that in moratorium until that period. I think it's great that you find a way to reverse that little amount, but you have $4,000 that could go towards a longer term solution of that is a thought. I don't.
Keep in mind that's several months though, so $4,000, and when we analyzed it beforehand.
Yeah, so
That would basically cover us for about a quarter of the month. But in our green waste fees,
yeah.
and so we'd be shelling out a lot of money for this service. However, you bring up a very valid point. The past month, as I've seen people driving around the community, you used to see green waste heading west towards Elk Ridge Park as you drive around the community. Now I see green waste heading east a lot, and that is not a good sign. And I don't know where it is going or where it's ending up, but just trailers galore with people heading east, and who knows where they're dumping it at that point. maybe they're just making a loop around the city to see how wonderful North Logan is.
With branches in their
With
truck bed.
Tons of branches.
And I think the other problem is it's not just North Logan residents, like we know that Logan cities funneling out to other cities as
Yeah.
well. So I think it's,
Roger brings up a good point, though. We need to keep looking at any option we can, and it's gonna be a pretty tough issue.
yeah,
Going forward.
okay. All right, we'll move on to lessons learned at the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Did you guys learn anything?
Yeah, it was good.
If we
I
get
thought
up
I'd
on
let
this
the more
screen-
senior members speak first.
That's Craig.
Wow.
By
And
by
you.
senior in age, that's.
Sounds like
Craig.
it was an
Oldest one out
investment.
here.
We're going by.
And I
age,
have the
so-
most gray hair.
Craig, how long have you been on the fire department? You might want to state how. long.
32 years, the same year Emily was born.
You said
I
it.
started as a firefighter.
Wow.
Yeah, we have very similar life experiences too. I have 30 years of experience existing.
The one that I went to, we had the general session with, no, his name left me now.
Tim tried.
Tim
The
Schreiber.
dignity index.
Tim
Yeah.
Schreiber. And then Tammy Pfeiffer did the breakout session with the Dignity Index. And in today's world, especially what we see on the national level, sometimes it trickles into the state level. It's just a tool that they have developed to put a little more dignity back in how we treat each other, especially in the political setting. It was interesting. I found it almost a little disheartening in the breakout session, how they talked a little bit about, a lot of people were concerned, well, if my candidate or my guy uses this, they're gonna look soft, they're gonna look bad, or the opponent's gonna use it
Yeah.
against them. Did you get
Yeah,
that?
Yeah.
I was a
They
little
were also really
disappointed.
focused. They were like, well, but what if what they're saying is the truth? And I truly found myself thinking, you're missing the point if you're that.
Exactly. I was a little
That was really,
disappointed
that was really
turn-
hard.
turn it like that. But I do think it is valid and holds some water, and I can be a little bit better with the way I treat people. And so it was, that was my take home with it, I guess. So I'll try to do better. It's a good book. If you read Tim Schreiber's book,
It was great.
it's a pretty good book. And if you don't know who Tim Schreiber is, his mother is JFK's sister and started the Special Olympics worldwide. So she's probably a pretty interesting lady.
Want me to go? Yeah, echo everything you said. The dignity index was probably one of the most valuable sessions. I'll echo what you guys said. I think what was troubling from the audience was somebody who was the campaign manager of a very high level senator in our state said, oh, I mean, he comes across that way, but he has to play that game. And if you knew him in person, he's the nicest guy. And I thought, well, that's part of the problem, right? Is
Yeah.
that these guys are putting on shows. I'm glad we don't see that here. And we've had really tough issues in North Logan City over the last year, the hardest I've seen, with, frustrations from folks that, maybe don't like the way we're interpreting code or vice versa, but I haven't seen it get personal. And I've appreciated that. And, we have dealt with some things recently where people have a right to be upset. And I think it was a good reminder that we're not always going to agree, but that each one of us has our reasons to be grateful for where we are, for people that want to call this their home, for people that want to serve on these councils and commissions. And, we're going to get to see that again this year in the election. The other thing I was going to add, that bill from the state regarding development was a complete shocker. I had read a little bit about it in the session. Interesting enough, I don't necessarily disagree with it, because I think if you got a strong code and a good city planner and good planning commission, then that should be able to go through those steps and get the proper approvals. But to know that we're out of that starting next year that's a big, effort that we've had to do. Every development we've had to go through, concept plan, development agreement, and to know that that's gone, you're going to have to put residents are going to have to put a lot of confidence in the staff and the planning commissions to do their due diligence on that. And for those that are here tonight that aren't part of that, that is state law. Our hands are tied. It's not negotiable. And so, you can look at that however you want. That was fascinating. The other thing I'll just add that I was going to email you to add it here. One of the conversations we had at lunch was with the Provo City Councilman. We talked the rec center, and that was fascinating seeing how they approach their build out of their rec center. We talked to Zion's Bank about bonding options. We went through a lot of discussions there now that there's a lot of interest in the community for this. And, at least we're getting more and more knowledgeable before we go down that path, but great set. I thought that was attended probably 5 or 6. That was the best one, in my opinion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Not because you weren't there. It's too bad you weren't there, but that was good.
No, the breakout sessions were particularly helpful, I felt like.
Emily, you're
Thanks,
probably
Sorry.
next.
I don't really have a whole lot more to add. I feel like there was a lot of, because I looked into the one that they were talking about, specifically the newest laws, and there's a lot of wishy-washiness that I think is really critical for us as a community to have our code really tightened up. And I know that there's gaps everywhere because that it just exists, that we can't foresee every potential problem. But that was something that really struck me of like, okay, if we have good code, if we have good thoughts, we'll be okay. But I mean, our code has bitten us in the butt before, so that was something for us to do. And one other thing I really took from this is that I think we need, and I didn't write this one down, I think that there are unique solutions to problems, but I've rarely found those unique solutions when all we're doing is whining. And there were more than one session where I ended it just being like, I'm not getting anything from this, because it turned into well, let's just blame the state for all of our problems. And it's like, we have to work with them, and we all exist here together. So, and I don't see that on our council at all, but it was definitely something to be like, we can complain about these rules, or we can just figure out how to work within them. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Was it just you 3 that went?
Joni was there as well.
And Alan,
He was
yes.
there, yeah.
We'll get to you, Alan. Yeah, so Alan, did you have additions to that?
Got a
I think
novel.
you guys have hit the nail on the head with several different items. The only thing I wanted to point out is that in one of the sessions, they talked about certain cities, they really focus beyond belief on what sets them apart. And as you look at like North Logan, there are several things that set us apart. But in these types of sessions, in the past session and in different sessions, they've talked about what are some of your community events that come through. Which is kind of ironic. When you look at North Logan City, we have the pumpkin walk, which is beyond unique in any community. The reason I say that is because it's basically run by volunteers with city staff support. So the volunteers do all the work. We just come in and support. There's a small financial contribution that's not covered through donations, but it's really basically very small that the city puts into this. And it brings in 60,000 people to our community. So literally you'll be in sessions and someone will shout out the North Logan Pumpkin Walk as a unique aspect within a community. And I think we need to really even extend that further and look at more of a pumpkin days is what we talked about. Emily's talked about this. I think we need to start pushing something along those lines.
Pumpkin princess.
Pumpkin, no, that one's not going to happen. We've already had very
They
critical.
are on a pumpkin float. Let's lean in.
Hence the Cinderella.
Yes.
But anywho, but like we have the pumpkin toss, we have the pumpkin run that we've added to those really popular events. But just to continue to expand on that, because that really creates a sense of community, especially when we're not spending a lot of money on that. Like these events that we're putting together, we're spending a fraction of the cost. So an adjacent community for some of their events that bring in maybe 5,000 people, they are spending $50,000. And we're spending less than that, far less than that on an event that brings in 60,000 people. We should probably look at expanding that as well and just highlighting that. And it's just incredible what the community puts together for that. So that was one item. You guys have touched on this, and so I can maintain some dignity and not be too critical. There's Senate Bill 174 that Buzzy talked about as well. We are going to have endless code changes. And so they're going to come through because everything that we make as a requirement within the subdivision process now has to have a code reference associated with it in our DSTM or in our code. It's going to be a very new and probably a lengthy process. It's not going to be shorter for developers. It's going to be several review meetings and several items. However, as Buzzy pointed out, it's one meeting with the city council. So it's a public hearing, comes before the city council.
Oh, yeah, thanks for. clarifying that.
There is one negative I don't think the state thought about though in this whole thing, and that is if a developer comes through and the requirement to have everything submitted is a huge expense for a developer. And if there's unknowns, that's very rude to the developer to have
That's
them
what I was-
come in.
I see a lot of developments that come in as a concept plan and then they never go back, they never build it.
Yes.
They're gonna have to put in so much work to get it through to the first meeting.
Mhm.
If it doesn't develop after that, they have outlaid a lot of money.
Yeah, that's,
I think this is a reflection of the fact that, like, this has been one of my frustrations, that the legislature no longer is made up of former city leaders. And I think that we're seeing the impact of that they just don't understand the process. You know, you can imagine that, but even just in the ones that I've spoken with, it's just it's hard. It would be hard information, especially if you're coming at it from a developer standpoint. It's just tricky. So it's frustrating, and we talked ad nauseum about SB 174,
Mhm.
but
I just think, the trend is that it's going to get actually a little bit harder for us. Every legislative session that comes up now, it's like you're bracing for, the
That does
loss
seem
of
to-
cities to
We
control.
do need to
there.
remember, though, I mean, there are people, our representatives are supposed to be representing us. So
Yeah.
bringing this feedback to them, I think is critical to say, like, here are the gaps, and even pointing out, I think that this is really hard for a developer as well.
oh,
I
yeah.
think, because I don't know, that was one of the things where I'm like, because I do think the concept plan really truly, at least in North Logan, has worked because it has allowed people to vastly change their plan. And I mean, we can even use the most recent development plan that we just looked at. Their original concept was an absolute no-go for the city or any of the residents. But if they had had to put in all the money to do a development plan before basically being told, like, this is not even going to get out of the ground, like, I feel like would have been really detrimental to them.
I think Emily brings up a good point. I wonder if we should, I don't know if we've ever I know Mike Pearson personally, but I wonder if we should formally reach out to Chris Wilson and Mike Pearson and say, let's do a once every 2 months workshop together where you guys come and hear what we're dealing with in the city, what we're hearing from our residents. So, so you're aware when you go to the state legislature every year, how certain laws that you're contemplating are affecting the land use or whatever, consideration we're dealing with in the city. But I don't know that we've ever formally done that. Maybe, I know we've said, oh, they should be at our meetings, but maybe just an actual, let's just workshop for an hour once every 2 months or
would
something
you
like
do that at the city council, or would you just invite them like to a workshop where a couple of us could be there?
Well, that's like, how can we do that? I mean, can we publicly notice a meeting that's not, where that is the focus of the entire meeting? So it's not formal agenda where we're going through all this, because they're gonna have time restrictions, right? And so I don't know, Mayor, if there's an
You can
option.
reach out to them and ask them about effectiveness,
Yeah.
because the limitations of having a workshop or anything else are the noticing and then keeping the minutes of the meeting.
Yeah.
However, a small meeting where you inform them through public documents of what's going on. But as this bill passes and it becomes more prevalent, I think we're going to have a list of about 20 things that are very difficult for the developer and very difficult for the city. And those might be the highlights that we need to convey to them to say, this needs some cleaning up.
Mike has asked, specifically has asked for feedback, specifically and said email would be the best way. And so I was planning on drafting an email, just like, here are the limitations I'm seeing, but I know that I am very limited in my experience. So I would really appreciate input. And I just,
So,
Before we do that, can we just see if they'd be willing to meet with us in
Meet?
person, and
yeah,
We're
I
not
mean,
just to get that really, I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to reach out to them. I will say I was in communication a lot with them during the session, both of them, specifically on this bill. And Mike was in a committee hearing on this bill specifically. And I don't mean to be pessimistic, but there was nothing he could do.
Yeah, no,
He
I-
voted it down in committee, but I think that there's just the reality that the majority of the legislators are development minded.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that that's a deficiency that if cured would change the outcome of something like this. But that has been a priority of mine, just personally to say, to be touching base with both Chris and Mike, and they've both been very responsive, like within minutes of me sending them messages. So I'm happy to do that because I think it's always good for them to kind of to know what's going on. And I will say that regardless of whether that formal meeting happens, that anytime you guys, if we get to a point where we want them to know something, I'm happy to be the conduit for that. But I think that the momentum is just so great
Yeah.
there that
Yeah.
there's not a lot that any individual legislator can accomplish in that way. And it was really interesting. The legislators came to a mayor's association where all the mayors in the valley came, and it was a really interesting perspective because we had the speaker come, Brad Wilson, and I think that they were actually, I don't know how much of the mayor's voices are getting to them, because I raised my hand and asked a question like why it wasn't this direct, but why all the anti-city legislation? And Speaker Wilson seemed shocked by that. And, we had follow-up discussion about it, but I just, there's a disconnect between city officials and legislators, and I don't know how to bridge that without having people who specifically have city experience. And that used to be the norm.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess I just want to make it clear. I don't think that it's a inaction on either of our representatives' part that could have changed something.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even our local state legislatures are actually, I think they're doing a fairly decent job, but neither one of them have city experience, that I recall.
Yeah, but I think that sometimes that makes it hard, because
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of, you can only explain it to a certain extent, if that makes sense. Like why a change in
Yeah.
the development process is such a negative on the cities. And so I think you're right. Like I'm not saying that without city experience you can't be a good legislator, but I think it's really hard to convey that.
They also aren't developers, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, they're right in the middle. That's true.
Yeah.
Neither one.
So anyway, I those are great points. And
I mean, I just know that his initial plan, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, was to do amendments, because he talked about how he was in committee and he was like, there are just so many unclear things. And so, I mean, I just think we should take advantage of the opportunity, whether it goes anywhere or not. I think starting the dialogue with not saying to them like, oh, SB 174 is like the worst thing we've ever seen, or it's so terrible, but instead being like, we could really use clarification on, and then mentioning like, these things make it really hard for the developer. I think we'll show, I don't know. And again, maybe this brings it back, making it more dignified, I think allows people to be less less defensive, because then they're not like, well, I'm making good choices. I don't know if that even makes sense. What I'm trying to say here though, is like, I think we should try.
I'm fine with that. Again,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out how that works in application. Because I think, like I said, I was in conference calls and direct calls with Cameron Deal, who's the league
Yeah.
director. And we kind of rely on the league to really be our voice in that. And so I think sometimes, and I experienced this with Mike, who was completely willing, and I was like live texting him during that committee meeting while watching it. But that's where the deals are struck between the league and the legislators, and like the leadership of the legislators.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes like I think the league is kind of where really it's the most efficient way to make sure that our voice is heard.
Yeah.
And I think just generally, I think I would always be in favor of having a great communication with our legislators, but I think it's hard. So I think it's good to have that open, but I think it's hard to anticipate what specific issues we're going to need advocacy on.
No, and
So-
you're right. And I did not myself watch the committee meeting. So I'm not quite, and I wasn't there when I don't know. I just figured might as well keep the door open to
Yeah.
positive communication. And maybe if the workshop idea isn't good, like as long as we're having positive communication with our legislators, at least that's a start.
Yeah,
And
no,
hope we're
I
there.
agree. I think that it's good, but again, I'm, I guess, a little bit more skeptical about the influence that like going that route is,
Yeah.
but I will say, like, again, Cameron Deal, like, I mean, he is super busy and he was returning my phone calls same day in the middle of the session. So
No.
that is a really big part of it in having influence, and so
My inexperience is just giving me a little dreamy eyed optimism, I guess.
I love it. Keep that. We don't all need to be jaded. But anyway, we can, I think that's good feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready to move on? Or is there any other things from the league? Okay. We'll move on to flooding preparation, prevention and mitigation efforts within North Logan City.
Hello. Just give you a quick update on kind of where we're at currently. Talking with Craig, we're in very good situation compared to some of the other cities that are around us that are really struggling. But just kind of an update. So our sandbagging effort, we began about 2 months ago. To date, we've given away about 3,000 sandbags. We have another few thousand filled that are at the shop ready to go. We have about 10,000 empty bags ready to deploy in an emergency. Some of our big areas, as you guys are aware, are like Green Canyon, some of the big drainages coming off of the face. So we're constantly monitoring those to see where the water's coming. Currently, we've been pretty good. We haven't had any issues. Green Canyon, like we mentioned earlier with Brian, he's been monitoring that basically around the clock, shoring up the drainage way. So that comes out of the canyon. It goes through a couple of retention ponds and then eventually makes its way to the canal. So it's been a little unique with all of the runoff that it's actually not making it to the canal yet. The ground's just sucking it up. So that's good. The canyon today, as we went up, isn't making it out. It's absorbing into the ground before it's coming out of the canyon, which is great as well. So we anticipate that that would be our biggest area. So we're working with the canal companies on making sure that the water isn't too high when and if that water makes it to the canal, and just shoring up that drainage way. We do have plans in place that if we have issues with that flow coming out too fast or too heavy, that we can discharge it into additional pond areas and hold a significant amount of water on the bench without basically without putting any homes at risk. So we are prepared to fill that gravel pit if needed, and we'll continue to monitor it.
Are we
So-
refilling that pond at the park? of Green
Yeah.
Canyon? Is that?
So that-
should fill this year, right? For sure.
Yes, yes, that pond is unique. That pond is
Yeah,
filled with well 3.
That's okay. So it's actually a well that
Yeah,
overflows
that's
or something.
that's an irrigation well that's
Okay.
up in the mouth of the canyon, and it has to go through the treatment plant in order for us to use it. So we have been putting it into the pond, and we will continue to keep that full this year. Runoff doesn't make it to that pond.
Yeah.
So it goes, where Alan's kind of drawn, that's the channel we are basically monitoring constantly, because if there is a breach in that, it can make it to some homes and cause damage. But over the years, back in like 2011, when there was big water years, the staff was able to make some cuts in the hill and kind of divert the water away from any structures.
Are they ready with sandbags in the event that they need to?
We've got just over 2,000 filled at the shop, in our shop on pallets next to the backhoes. So we're ready to go. And we've got 10,000 on hand. So if it does breach up there, we're ready to go. But the nice thing about that area is it's a lot of rock and gravel, and we've been pushing it with backhoes and loaders and been moving it around. So we're pretty good, knock on wood. But as of right now, the drainages across the face have been really dry. We're not getting a lot of runoff in those. Green Canyon would be our major one that we'll just keep watching.
Okay,
Questions, comments, concerns, anything you've heard from people?
Nice job.
yeah,
It's not us, it's just how it's melting. So
That's true. too.
good job melting the snow.
Take some credit.
it's getting cooler this weekend. So it's
Yeah.
gonna melt again.
It is their department. They put forth
Yeah.
a lot of effort. And then individual home prevention as well. I mean, it's been a lot of effort this spring.
Buzzy is gonna be staying after for cleanup. Okay,
Good thing it's water.
I think water one's next on this.
okay,
Hangout.
sounds good.
So
Why don't-
excited about the water improvement.
It's true.
Okay, yeah, why don't you move on to water capital improvement?
Okay. So with the water updates, it's cool. Yeah, it's this one. Water conservation plan has been sent out. It's been in the newsletter. It's been on a bunch of mailboxes. Currently, we are starting with a 3-day-a-week watering cycle. The canal systems are probably going to turn in the next 2 weeks. They've got some repairs to do and some dredging to do to get that canal, the upper and middle canals ready to go. Flip the Strip program is something that you've probably seen, like Hyde Park has adopted it. It's a state program now that's open to everybody in the state, but you have to fulfill certain requirements for development. So we'd have to pass a bunch of code in order to qualify for that. So
Is that true, even though we have like the very strict?
yeah,
Okay,
it's
we
very
need more,
detailed on like
what it has to say.
park strips.
Hmm.
They can only be a minimum of 8 feet. They can't have grass in them. And then front lawns cannot have more than 50% grass. And so they have some pretty restrictive requirements. So we'll have to look into that to see if it's something that we want to pursue.
Okay,
But we'll start vetting that in the next coming weeks with Scott and everybody. Well 5, they're going to start pump testing this week, and they'll continue building the pump house. And the CIB grant, we did apply for that so that we can cover some of our 50% of the water studies that are underway.
okay.
So that's where we're at on.
Any
water.
questions on that? Okay, how about
Thanks, Jordan.
updates? Thanks, Jordan. Updates on Civic Center?
The basic updates are, you've seen, the walls.
You ready to
That's
talk about
showing
the
it.
Spanish tile?
Yeah, we can go over that, but the floor is in now. That's probably the latest update since you've last seen it. And then just the brick, the structural brick is coming in. We just received notice that it might be a few weeks later, a month later, depending on the type of brick that we need to get in. But at that point, then they just build up the bricks from there, put in the steel joists and continue on from that point.
Yeah, I'm encouraged, and I think the steel joists are here,
They're here.
right? So
Do you remember
exciting.
what color is that building going to be?
Cedar, tumbleweed, and
sand, oh,
it's a mix of like
Mustard
red
yellow.
brick, tan
Sandal.
brick, and several different brick.
so it has
Okay.
like a little bit of accents that tie into like the police and library
Oh, okay.
building. And then, but most of it's more of a brownish color.
How fast can you type it up again? That was pretty impressive last time.
Yeah.
No fat finger, no.
He clearly types it a lot.
Yeah.
Is it here? Where is it?
All that's going
Oh
on.
boy. There you go.
Oh, okay.
So there's the El Dorado, cedar, tumbleweed, and I don't know what the red brick's called.
Hmm,
Cool.
Can't
Looks nice.
remember.
Thank you.
I like the landscaping too. Casey Moriyama designed that? Did he do the?
No.
Oh, okay. Too expensive, man. Don't blame you.
Yes.
He is. But he says he gives North Logan a deal. That's what he told me.
It's
Okay.
we have to, well, we just have to bid it out.
Yeah.
So, and it's Design West. Okay,
That's it.
then we'll do reports from city officers. We'll start with chief. Anything else on that, Alan, while he's coming up?
No, no, unless you have anything.
No,
Italian marble or tile that you're looking at.
we'll spring it on him later.
Okay, thank you. This report is from the 23rd to the 29th, this last week here. So we had total of 29 stops that we did and 121 calls that our officers handled. We also had 2 detectives that will be finishing up the Crime Scene Academy this week and have that under the belt. And we sent 2 of our training officers down to the emergency vehicle operations. So that allows them to get certified, be able to run license, siren and code to the calls. I wanted to kind of give a quarterly update. We're, quarterly through the year. Last year in 2022, May 3rd, we were sitting at 2004 calls. And today, right now we're at 1837. So we're about 167 calls less than what we were last year. So fairly close, just a little bit lower than that. We're still working with Alan and Marcus on the code enforcement officer and that description and what that will look like there, and then trying to just improve our procedures here. So
Okay,
had a busy week.
great. Thanks, chief.
Thank you.
Scott?
Just two quick things real quick here. As Alan had mentioned earlier in the meeting, we did get our grant funds through UDOT for the general plan. I want to give you just an idea of timeline. So within this month, by the end of the month, we have to have a scope provided to UDOT for their review and approval as the granting entity for those funds. But once that scope is established and approved, that will basically be the basis of our RFP that goes out to select a consultant. So we will have funds within the next 2 months from UDOT to start really getting work done on that. So that's kind of generally when you can expect for the initiation of that process. It's a good 1.5 to 2.5 year long process. There'll be a lot of general plan discussion upcoming. Also, now if you want to go into that folder, there's this mid-year cash summit flyer. This is coming up middle of June. It's an evening discussion, 5:30 to 7:30, dinner provided. We do have to register if you'd like to attend. Maybe just give me a quick heads up. But they will be talking about regional zoning, land use, housing type topics. So if you want to go June 15th in the evening, we do have to register in advance. So if you want to go, let me know and we'll get you registered for it.
Okay,
Okay, it's here at Utah State.
that would be interesting.
Yep. That's
Okay,
it.
thanks, Scott. Jordan? Scott? Alan?
Just the list of upcoming events.
And then mayor's message while you pull that up, Roger. For June.
It's his wife.
/ cheers.
It's due May 15th.
She'll take care of it.
So looking through this, we had our Founder's Day activity. Thanks to everyone that was involved in that. That was fantastic. So the Founder's Day is April 28th. Looking through a lot of historic records. It's actually April 27th. That's the day the Ralph Smith's home was dedicated. And so each year we probably do a service activity around that time. We can expand on that in the future. Jumping through here, the pickleball tournament, we already went over extrication equipment demo. Hats off to you guys for going to that. That was pretty fun with the fire department. Walmart re-grand opening. They call it the re-grand opening. It's the grand reopening. Will be this Friday at 10 a.m. They've rescheduled that twice, and I think this one's probably going to stick.
What kind of representation? I mean, I can go to that. Do we want to, is anybody going to want to wear North Logan polos? Tell me what your.
Some of us don't
You
have
look good in
North
your
Logan
North
polos.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, I would absolutely love to do it.
But I have an extra one.
If I was honestly going to show up because my children heard that there might be free candy and
And
so,
they said farm animals at one point,
oh,
so.
wow, okay, that's even better than I was expecting.
Do they want us to come? I mean, do they want us to be near the front with them? What's their? Or
I would
just there to
imagine they've
watch?
really let us know each time with each iteration. And so if you can make
Yeah.
it at least for a few minutes, I don't anticipate it'll be very lengthy, but if you want to come and just mix and mingle with the manager, let them know what we can provide and help them out with. I mean, that's fantastic.
So Friday, 10 a.m., right?
Yeah.
I guess it was being Joni and Alan and Scott that met with Walmart. So,
Yes.
but yeah, I think definitely let them know that we have representation there. I think that'd be great.
Are you going?
I think so. It kind of depends. We have a meeting usually Friday at that time, but.
I swear, but I'm the only one that shows up.
I'm planning on
North
being
Logan
there.
shirt.
I will
That's right.
be there.
Okay, says the man who didn't show up
Fuzzy,
tonight.
Fuzzy, if nothing else, I will be there. I probably won't go up, but that's mainly because I will have my children with me, so.
Well, I'm not gonna go. Last time I went up for ribbon cutting hair, I was the only guy wearing shorts. That was awkward.
That wasn't ribbon cutting.
That was a shovel digging, yeah, but still even worse than shorts.
What was
Um,
that,
Great
Buzzy?
Country Levi's on this.
He was talking about when you guys. what do they call
Anyway.
it?
Nobody told me we were gonna end up. in the front.
Groundbreaking.
I didn't know. I thought I was just there to watch.
Okay.
That's smart casual is what that's called.
Smart casual.
So
Did we
going
talk
to-
about spring cleanup?
spring cleanup, that's this Friday and Saturday. And this is kind of in lieu of having green waste bins there. And I think we're probably one of the only communities doing a spring cleanup. And then we've talked about doing a fall cleanup as well. But we will have 7 dumpsters on the north end of Elk Ridge Park. Just for that one day. So instead of cleaning up every day throughout the entire year, we'll have one day of probably really messy cleanup. We will have people there to help and monitor to make sure that they are North Logan City residents.
And
It's
that
just
they're,
green waste, right?
No,
Just-
it's green waste and general refuse. There'll be three
missed that.
dumpsters there for general refuse.
oh,
So that'll be this Friday and Saturday during the daytime, and then no dumping on Sunday, and then we'll have to rope off the area, and because they don't come and pick up the dumpster until Monday.
Okay.
It will be messy though. We recognize that, but
And we have, I guess, dedicated employees who are gonna be
they've all
monitoring.
taken a shift, so
Awesome.
we need to kind of congratulate them.
Yeah, no
thank
kidding.
them For taking.
I'm gonna
shifts.
preemptively thank them because
Yeah, that's
it's
a-
not going to be fun.
Yeah, it won't be fun.
Thank
We'll
you,
have a
Vernon.
It's not the
lot of
really
surrounding
young looking
community
one, is it?
residents that are going
I
to come to that.
know.
So.
You gotta tell them to be strong, cause
Yep.
we, you know, it's kinda, that's where we are.
Now, we have just posted on Parliament, not Facebook, because if we put it on Facebook, it goes valley-wide. If we put it on Parliament, it's just to our residents.
Yeah.
Um,
I do appreciate how you phrased it because it did say ID required, like a little message, which I thought was.
Are you planning on sending another parlent out?
we can, or we've already had a ton of people that are, they'll be full, like our
Yeah.
greenways. bins.
The only reason I was gonna ask is if, I think anything we do say, just emphasize that fact that there will
Yeah.
be people checking. So, okay,
Then just Mountain Land, Supply grand opening, and then Memorial Day, just to note, May 29th. Keep that on your radar. Bunch of other events, city events coming up after that, but those are the key ones the next month or two.
okay. All right, then I would entertain.
Oh. One more item, sorry, this is a kind of a chastising item. We went over this with the city staff as well. One thing, when you attend a conference, when you go to get your lodging, sometimes Scott sets it up, sometimes you guys set it up, either way. But be very aware that when you go to register for a hotel or anything, 90% of the hotels have participated in a state bid process to get on the state bid. What that means is certain areas of the state, and each state, they have a set amount of what you should be paying for them to be on that state bid. The vast majority of the state of Utah is between 85 and 95. Some go up to 100 in Salt Lake. That is it. That is the cap. And so if you go and you stay in a hotel, do not get the conference rate, do not get the great group rate, whatever they throw out at you. Say, I just need the state government rate when you go to stay at a hotel, because that's what it is. It's $100 or it's 85 a night. And that is the Hilton, the Marriott, wherever you stay, that's what they bid. And so just be leery when you register for a hotel. And then if you end up staying, which is more common now, it was unheard of a few years ago, in like an Airbnb, just know that you will be reimbursed that state amount. There's specified areas. And so if you're in Salt Lake, it'd be like $100 a night, and St. George would be like $90 a night is what you'd be reimbursed for your stay. Just keep those things in mind.
Okay.
But you have to be tough, and you have to call the hotels directly. You can't do it online.
When Scott books
didn't-
them, do you do that, Scott? Okay,
Well, so did I get over reimbursed on that? Because I'm happy,
No, you're
whatever
fine. It's just letting you know in the future as you go forward. And then
because I think mine was the same as the rates that we paid for this one when we looked, or do we get a
Which one
government?
is that?
Oh, okay, all right.
But going forward, and even like when we reserve for the conference down in Salt Lake, in the past, we have just gotten the group or the conference rate, which is like 130, 140 a night.
Yeah,
That
that's
is not the
129.
government rate.
Okay.
Hmm.
So just so you know, going
Okay.
forward,
What about charges to the room?
covered, fuzzy, covered.
okay.
All joking.
Then I'd entertain a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Adjourn.
I think
Or-
we're going to
Executive.
executive session.
Yeah.
Let's
Do we have to adjourn?
let's make a motion to take a break and then move into executive.
Motion
Motion.
approved. So
Okay.
moved.
Motion by Buzzy, and he approves, and second by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Let's do it quick, though.
You are the best.
You can't sit at the table. The opposite of Jen.
You